Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Kill Connor Club podcast, not live this time, pre-recorded. The last one for 2015, which is amazing. It's been huge. I mean, the podcast really technically officially started this year, and it's grown and grown and grown, and it's been so amazing. And we've got very, very special guest Luma here with us today for the final episode, which I know James and I are super excited about it. And I mean, at this point, Luma, you're like the last remaining, one of those big Assassin's Creed community members that I used to watch that kind of inspired me personally to make a channel from the beginning. You're like the godfather of the Assassin's Creed community in a way, I guess.
Oh, well, thanks so much. I don't know if I'd go that far, but that's cool to hear. I appreciate it. And I'm really happy to be here. I do want to make a note really quickly. I am a pro-Connor person. Connor fan. Just wanna
Tyler, stop the podcast. Stop this.
Me being on this podcast does not endorse the title of it. Just pointing that out. But yes,
that's
cool.
right.
So yeah, no, I'm happy here.
I think the funny thing is for lots of because I know a lot of people love Connor. I mean, plenty of people that listen to this love Connor. It's kind of like new people to the podcast get really upset. They're like, "Why is it called this? I love Connor." I'm like, we don't actually, it's not a thing we hate Connor. It's just kind of like a joke, So
yeah, and I got that from one of the other podcasts, I think, and it was. I understand it. I just want to make sure if people see I'm on the Kill Connor podcast, I just want to point out I'm a big proponent of Connor.
yes, I know. Noah Watts wouldn't be happy.
Yeah. Would have been a very different interview with Noah Watts if I wasn't a fan of Connor. But yeah.
Yes, I'm not sure if he's a big fan of us. I'm not sure if he likes us too much, but I mean, we'll try to get him on one day. That'll be great. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. That'd be interesting, yeah.
So your podcast, Luma, the Assassin's Den, I mean, man, it's massive. I remember the size of it when you got Roger Craig Smith on. I was checking that the other day. It has hundreds of thousands of views on it. I mean,
oh yeah.
How does it feel like you have the biggest Assassin's Creed podcast, number one, in the world?
I guess so. And it's also kind of weird because I mainly put it out on YouTube, so it's kind of weird to have like a YouTube only podcast kind of, but sometimes it's kind of crazy when I look back and I see like all the people that I've interviewed and everything, and just it's because you kind of take it step by step, but when you kind of look back at the whole of it, even though I don't upload podcast episodes as nearly as much as I want to, because they take a decent amount of time to set up and record and edit, as I'm sure you guys know.
Yes.
And in the midst of all my other like video stuff I want to do for the channel, like I'm always lacking for more time, but like even with the time I have had and the guests I have had, it is really crazy for me to kind of look back every once in a while and just be like super grateful that I've had the opportunity to chat with so many like people that I really admire and that kind of inspire me in a lot of ways. And just as a fan, obviously it's also kind of a dream come true for a lot of these people too,
Yeah,
it's really cool.
You've had the who's who of the Assassin's Creed, developers and actors and stuff on the podcast. I mean, we had Victoria Atkin on a couple months ago, and I know James and I were literally like fanboying the fuck out.
I saw that. That was really cool. Yeah, Victoria seems super awesome. Yeah, she's so cool.
Yeah, she was really great, and I mean, like you said, man, it takes so long to set that stuff up, and I mean, you managed to get all these people on. So I mean, I know as an Assassin's Creed community member, I thank you for all that hard work as well, because I mean, years of listening to that, it's been it's come a long way.
Oh, thanks. I mean, it's really great to hear that people like it's it definitely makes it easier with all the work and everything to hear when people really enjoy it. So thanks a lot.
Oh, no worries at all. So, James, what we wanted to talk to, James and I want to talk to you mainly about Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Obviously,
sure.
the new game. James has put his review out and stuff, and I've yet to. I will soon at some point. But what were your overall thoughts with Syndicate, especially after the debacle that was Unity?
Well, no, I really enjoy Syndicate. It's probably in my top 3 for Assassin's Creed games. I've started to. I was just listening to the Animus Island podcast where they were trying to place where Syndicate is in the thing, and they were talking about how it's hard to kind of rank each one, like enumerate them within a list, and so I've kind of started to separate them into like the good ACs and the bad ACs almost. And like, you know, one pile has like Unity 3 and 1, which, you know, all of them have their strengths, but overall they're different from the set that includes 2, 4, and like Syndicate and Brotherhood and like Rogue and all that. So I really enjoyed it. It was as good as I had hoped, pretty much, actually a little better. I wasn't as pessimistic, I think, as other people, because well, I mean, maybe not some of the other fans, but I think some of the general populace, because you know, it's almost like this pattern that they have where the bad Assassin's Creed games tend to kind of be too ambitious, and it usually comes with a new engine, like an engine rewrite, and like they try to do too many things. And then when they iterate on that is when you get like the good Assassin's Creeds, like AC4 coming off of AC3, and then Syndicate off of Unity. I'm not the first person to point this out, like almost this like cycle. It's like the even numbered Star Treks or something. Like but like yeah, so I was really overall really impressed with it. And I think one of the things that surprised me how much that I mean, there were actually a lot of really pleasant surprises in Syndicate. There's some stuff in there that obviously I still wish they would improve on, but like, I think just having a really solid city with London, and that's partly because with the wider streets and everything, it just looks, I mean, it's a whole bunch of factors that come into it, but the city feels absolutely alive and wonderful and immersive in a way that Unity just never was. And for me personally, like the British accents thing in Unity did more to break my immersion than like anything else in there, because you couldn't walk down the street like more than 5 feet before you, and it's like French, and then some guard's like, "Oh, you, what are you doing walking around here?" Like, and like, or like the fucking like ladies like, "Oi, that's not yours, it's mine, help, like, and it's just like, what the fuck, this is not Paris, like, why are they British? Like, and I know there's like a spectrum, and like some people it doesn't bother them at all, and then you'd probably have me on the other end of the spectrum where it just absolutely shatters everything, and it just makes me angry every time it happens. And so
Yeah.
so like I said, there's a lot of factors that go into it. One of the nice things is that they can all have British accents and it's not out of place, but also just they did a beautiful job recreating the city. The wide streets give it a way different feel than a lot of the other AC games, and like there's just so much going on around in the, like, I think they have more NPC like stuff going on as well, and the carriages, I just love all that. And the Thames also, like, I could just keep going on and on, but I think that was the thing that probably surprised me the most, is how much I love this city and how well they nailed it. I think really, if you can create like a really immersive atmosphere in an AC game, for me, like, I can forgive a lot of other things, honestly.
Yeah, I think I felt the same about London, because I was very cynical leading into it. After Unity,
Oh god, you were.
I was just like, fuck all this. I was just so like, there wasn't much. Because I wasn't a fan of the setting of Victorian London. I am now. They won me over, and I think it was mainly due to how immersive London was as a city. Yeah. Whereas prior, I was very concerned and just super cynical about it, and James is telling me, you know, "Oh, it might be good, and I'm like, "Oh, fuck off." Yeah. Turns out James was right. But
yeah, well, I mean, like, sorry, real quick, like, one thing that I always try to, like, that always kind of comes to mind when I'm thinking about the next game is, like, one of the developers told me, like, a couple of years ago, basically that, you know, every Assassin's Creed game has the opportunity to be, like, you know, a good one or a bad one. And on the surface, it sounds like kind of like a "you don't say" like type quote or something, but like, but what goes behind it is, like, you know, there's so many factors that go into these games, just even beyond how long they spend on the game and what the early release cycle is. Like, even beyond that, there's just so many factors that go into it that it's really, it's really difficult to use kind of past games as a predictor of future ones. And you know, every studio and team is going to bring something different, and they're going to be working with whatever the circumstances are at the time. And it's just, so I always choose to go into like all of these kind of thinking that, and then leaning towards the optimistic side. And yeah, it's sometimes, you know, Unity happens, but then sometimes Syndicate happens, so it's all good.
yeah, I know what you mean.
Wow, yeah. You know, something that I wanted to ask was, me and Tyler both kind of, when they showed the rope launcher, we were both kind of like skeptical about it, didn't know what we thought. But like, what are your thoughts on the rope launcher?
Well, I mean, I could see beforehand, even before the game came out, like that it's necessary because of the wide streets and the really tall buildings. Like you need something to help you navigate that. If you tried to navigate it like Unity, I think it would just be really, really frustrating. I think it plays really well. It's really there's really little subtle things about it that make it just feel really nice to me. Like just the right amount of controller vibration when you fire it, and then just the animations about how they make them kind of as they're climbing up, they'll stop at various points and jump off, like signs that stick out of the building and stuff like that. Like all of that really helps. At the same time, it is like it's one of those things that's just so fantastical, and especially in their implementation of it, like the times when you're sliding up at like 45-degree angles and stuff, and it's just like, yeah, no, like let's not even pretend that's remotely possible in any sort of way whatsoever. And so it's kind of one of those times when I'm like, like I just wish they'd. I like how it plays. I think it's something like was necessary. I wish they had put a little more effort into kind of explaining this. And I was talking about this a little bit before the game came out, where I was a little worried that Quebec seems to, one of my big worries about Quebec Studio, who have impressed me in a lot of ways with Syndicate. But like with some of the things they'd worked on previously, especially Tyranny of King Washington, they seem to kind of ignore they seem to just throw gameplay solutions in and not care too much about the explanation behind them. When I feel like that's like a really big part of the brand, at least that I remember, like from the first 3 games, like the Patrice games, basically, where everything had like some explanation for it. And even the more fantastical stuff could be explained by science and by like the Animus and Pieces of Eden and stuff. So even when you have something like the hidden gun in AC2, which is stretching the, kind of bounds of believability probably, it's at least like, oh well, it's based on like first civ designs basically, and fucking Leonardo da Vinci had to make it, like from Altair's schematics or whatever. The rope launcher, I was like, okay, I just hope that they like kind of, if they can just kind of throw some token explanation, like it'll be enough for me. And I was a little disappointed to feel like, oh yeah, it's like this fucking random gang member had one, I guess I'll just pick that up. And all right, yeah, and oh hey, Alexander Graham Bell made me another one. Like it's just like, oh come on, like this is like there's a lot of aspects of it that just are not realistic at all. To like, I mean, the series has never been about total realism, but it always had like some explanation and stuff, and I feel like it's kind of losing that aspect of it a little bit. So that kind of makes me sad. But other than that, I like how it played and music.
It's tough.
Oh,
go James.
Something that, because this is like I noticed it. I'm not like, obviously this was completely irrelevant at this point, but those first ever leaks that we got of like the target gameplay that was like last year or whatever. There was images that showed the rope launcher, but it was more of like a I don't even know what you call it, like a grappling hook.
Grappling
kind of
hook, like that you would swing across.
Swing,
It's totally different. Like it was not a. Well, I think it still had the thing where you could like shoot it and jump up, but there was no, like I don't think there was any kind of like zip line functionality shown. And then of course in the final game you can't swing on it like it's shown in the screenshot. And so yeah.
Would you guys have preferred grappling hook kind of thing and having a hook blade come back?
You mean like something you swing on in addition to a Revelation style hook blade?
Well, yeah, I guess just for the slightly more realistic sense, maybe you could have the gun that shoots it and it lands like that, but then you jump on it with a hook blade instead. I guess it's just tough going upwards.
I don't know. I think there's no real way around the fact that it plays. It's hard to imagine it playing any better in any other thing. So I don't know. I think I would have just been happier if they had just kind of made some kind of token gesture towards being like, okay, we know this is like unrealistic, but here's our kind of like explanation for it that, look, let's all just be real here. This would be a very difficult game to play if we didn't have this. So let's just pretend it's first civ technology and like, let's just go with this. But instead they're just like, oh yeah, this random gang member is just walking around with it. And nobody seems to remark on how insane it is.
The crazy thing about Syndicate, and I said this before the game came out, and it's because I was cynical about the rope launch. I was cynical about those the electric bombs and stuff. But the only reason I was because I'm happy for it to be unrealistic if they want to go in that direction with the whole game. but it seemed just so hypocritical from Ubisoft in a sense, because one minute they're saying we want it to be, you know, immersive and realistic to the setting, so you can't have a hood on, but you have electric bombs that don't damage you and it kills everyone around you. You also have a rope launcher and you can go invisible. Like, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm confused about the direction here.
Even the hood thing doesn't seem realistic to me. Like, as soon as you can never just walk around with the hood. And this is, I mean, that ties into what I was saying earlier about what I was worried about, which is like, it seems like, you know, I did an interview with Marc-Alexis Cote, who is the creative director, and we were talking about that at E3, and he was like, oh yeah, but it's like a really good like visual feedback, like that you are in stealth mode or you are not in stealth mode. Like, you have the hood up. Yeah, and I'm just like, yes. I mean, he's absolutely right? Like, it is really good visual feedback. You either have the hood on and you're in stealth, or you don't and you're not. But it's like, it's at the expense of like any like kind of immersion type aspects. And that's what I was talking about, like with, you know, Tyranny King Washington had a bunch of things like that. The rope launcher, Eevee's chameleon ability, like are all like play well, but they just don't. It's hard for me as a fan of the first 3 games where everything was given like a really thorough explanation, including the more gamey elements of the game, like respawning the HUD is all explained by the analyst. Like, I like when games go out of their way to kind of, you know, kind of explain things that aren't even necessary to, like, most other games don't even bother with. And I think that's dropped off, whether or not it's because Patrice left, but after he left, certainly I feel like a lot of that's dropped off, and that makes me sad because I really enjoyed that initially. But yeah, I don't know. I was worried about all those things, and they still bother me, but the strengths of the game, like I said, if they can create like a really immersive like city and stuff, then I can more easily forgive a lot of the other stuff. So it mostly worked out. These are like the quibbles I have with the game.
Yeah. You know something that I was actually just thinking, which, you know, the like abilities that Connor had in the Tyranny King Washington.
Yeah.
Were those ever explained? Like, what was, because it wasn't like this is like an alternate universe where this stuff can happen, because it was literally just a universe where King Washington got the apple. So those things still shouldn't, like, what was that?
Yeah, that always kind of bothered me too, because the vision, the shared dream vision or universe or whatever you want to call it, I don't think it's ever really been fully explained. Whatever you want to call it, it's still based on the same like physics and whatever of our real world. It's not like suddenly there's magic in this world. And so it seemed really weird to me. And like, I don't know, it's hard for me to really say this, like, it feels really weird for me to say this since I'm not Native American, but it actually felt like slightly racist to me, almost, to be like, oh, and then he's going to go drink the magic tea and it's going to give him superpowers. And by the way, everyone speaks English now, even though we made a big deal about everyone speaking Mohawk when AC3 came out. Like, and like, I just don't, it was just really weird. I wasn't a fan of a lot of stuff of Tyranny King Washington, even though I know some fans really like it. Like, wasn't a fan of how they handled the story. I thought the powers were interesting from a gameplay perspective, but like had no place in the AC universe. And I don't know, it
felt pointless.
These were a lot of things, a little bit pointless. It's almost like you could. You know, kind of echoes of maybe of Unity's modern day, and it's like, oh, I guess nothing really matters, because it's like, oh no, George Washington has an apple, and then nothing happened in the real world or whatever, right? Kind of, except now that they have these memories, but they don't focus on how that affects Connor. They only show how it affects Washington, and I'm like, I don't give a shit about Washington. Like, I care about the assassin.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, fair enough. But like, these were the things that really worried me going in, and luckily, like, nothing that major is like there in Syndicate, like enough to like spoil the game for me personally anyways. So, but yeah, it's tricky. I don't know.
Well, that's good segue into what comes out this coming week, which is Jack the Ripper DLC for Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
Yeah.
What do you think going into this? Because I'm super confused. I'm sitting here like, is this gonna be? I mentioned this to James. I was like, is this gonna be another Tyranny of King Washington? It's kind of like some weird alternate universe because there's this now magic fear gas and stuff. Like, I'm kind of confused about where they're going with this.
I don't think so. I would be very, very surprised if that were the case. It looks like it's just, you know, it's purporting to be history, although with like some slightly exaggerated elements. Like, you know, Syndicate had, you know, voltaic lightning bombs that nobody in Victorian London was actually walking around with. Also a rope launcher. Like, so I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, so no, I personally don't think it's going to be an alternate reality thing. I am just really, I have really conflicted feelings about it, and I really want to see how they handle it in the game. I'm mostly concerned about just the premise and the writing, because Jack the Ripper is, I mean, this is one of the this is the most recent time period for like a historical, not counting like the comic books with like Nikolai and all that, but like as far as like what you play, this is like really recent. It's 130 years ago. It's not that far away. Like there are people who have great grandparents that were around during that time and everything, and it's just Jack the Ripper, like when you look into the like at least the 5 murders that people usually canonically like link with him, is such a disgusting character. And I really the thing that worries me about this is just kind of this general like fascination that the media and like a lot of the public seems to have with making really horrible people infamous. And I just like, he did some really disgusting things to the prostitutes and women like that he murdered. And I have really conflicted feelings about making a game around it. And like I said, we'll have to see how it's handled, but like you see in the trailer, like they're giving him a voice and like making him a whole character, and it's like almost, and they seem to indicate that he has like ties to the assassins in some way or another. And like I don't know what they're going to try to explain about him, but it just I feel like people like Jack the Ripper don't deserve to have stuff like this made for them. Like, I don't know.
I see what you're saying.
Like I said, I have to see how it goes.
I see what you're saying.
Topic,
we have a similar. I don't know if you guys, as an Australian, I don't know if you know about one of the most famous or infamous Australians to ever live was a man named Ned Kelly, and it was around the 1880s as well, around the time of Jack the Ripper. He was a bushranger, and he killed police officers and stuff, and some people call him, the greatest Australian hero of all time. Some people call him, some brutal murderer, and lots of people don't like, that he gets, like you said, infamous, or he gets kind of promoted in a film about him or stuff, whereas some people love him because they thought he was just the, Aussie battler, and, just kind of, he fought against the authority. It's kind of, so I see what you're saying in that sense, and I get it, because I mean, this guy, Ned Kelly didn't murder prostitutes. Police tried to arrest him and he killed them, but this is a bit different because this guy's some crazy killer. So I do see what you mean by you don't think he should be promoted or whatever.
I don't know. I mean, it's not just the killing, right? It's like the fact that he would like disembowel all his victims and take their organs, and like he penetrated one like vaginally with like an object, and she died like a day. Like, it's just like,
fuck.
I don't like it. It feels too. Maybe it's just because we've had like, I live in America where we have more shootings and like mass shootings than days in the year, and it's like. I hate seeing all these people making the headlines. I wish that they would just fade into obscurity like they kind of deserve to. And so maybe it's just like in the context of that, like this year has been a really bad year, that I just really feel uncomfortable, at least just with what I've seen of like kind of, I know they're not really trying to glorify him. I don't think that's what they're going to do. It doesn't look like that's what they're trying to do. But like, kind of weaving in there, using his story as like the backdrop. And I get it because he's like this really like famous, like Victorian, he's tied to Victorian London like completely. And so I totally get it. I'll have to see how it plays out. It leaves me feeling a little icky though. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just me.
James you get a bit touchy about this subject. I don't know why you get this more than anyone, of what people think, who people think Jack the Ripper is. James, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, because he is definitely Jacob. Yep.
Right.
He wears, he's got the hat. And no, yeah, that's it. No, yeah, he's got that. Yeah, proof. It's confirmed. He's Jack the Ripper. Yeah. People refuse to believe that he could be someone else.
Yeah.
They're so sure that he's Jacob, and I'm just so confused.
The most likely thing I think I've seen is that he's like some apprentice of the assassins or something. I don't like if they.
Oh, that I just hate that too. Like, because
Yeah, I don't like it too either. I don't know.
Like, I feel like I hate the idea that they're just gonna take Jack the Ripper and they're gonna be like, yeah, he's like tied to the assassins, or he's a Templar, like something like that. It's like, can you just not like?
I don't know. Well, I mean, they've always put their spin on historical people who have done awful things, you know. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just because it's so recent, and because like, I'm also just really interested in. Because it's so different in tone from Syndicate. You know, Syndicate, you know, I just did a podcast with Jeffrey Holland, and he repeatedly was talking about how Syndicate is a buddy comedy, basically. And, you know, that's why nobody important. Sorry, like full spoilers, I'm assuming.
Yeah, full spoilers.
But like, that's why nobody really dies besides the bad guys, and like why it had such a different tone, and why London is, you know, pretty much portrayed pretty as a pretty nice place. Yeah, positively and everything. And then you get to
Child
Jack
slaves,
the Ripper.
but sure, yeah.
Yeah, child slaves, but you're liberating them, and then they go home to their whatever, like I don't even know where they go to the streets, but they're certainly happier for sure. But like, it seems like you go to Jack the Ripper, and it seems like such a huge tonal shift. I'm really curious how that's gonna feel. And yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I guess by the time this podcast is out, I think the DLC will have come out, so people will look back on this in interest, and it's like a historical thing. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever been as apprehensive and kind of just not knowing what to expect as for a DLC as I am with this one, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It's tough to tell at the moment, because I mean when the podcast's out, like you said, I just realized this. I was like, everyone's gonna know, but at the moment, you know, we're just speculating on what we think, and I agree. But you mentioned with the whole, you know, spoilers again, you know, nobody important died except the bad guys. That was a problem I actually had with Syndicate, and I'm not a big fan of always some good guy dying, or you know that. But I just felt
it's almost a cliche at this point. So
I agree. I just thought the only reason this game needed it was because, you know, it was the only real issue I had. Like, because I thought Syndicate got all these little things right, like an immersive city, a beautiful soundtrack, and all that sort of stuff, and great characters that were well performed. And then it missed some key pillars of the story, which was obstacles, which was they had nothing to overcome. I was like, what reason do I have to get behind Jacob and Evie? They are just coming in as two young assassins and just fucking destroying the Templars. Nothing happens to them. They tried to do the whole, you know, Jacob kills someone, you know, Evie has to clean it up, but then Jacob's not learning from it. It's just building some tension between two characters that in the end they just talk it out. So I just thought, when there's no obstacles, there had to be some consequences for the mistakes they've made, but there was none.
Yeah, I like the idea that I don't know if you guys have heard the podcast, but like initially in the podcast, Jeffrey that I did with Jeffrey Ohan, the lead writer, but initially like they had the plan where the things that Jacob would do would have much more severe consequences, like actual gameplay consequences and everything.
I did hear this.
Right, so it's like once you collapse the financial sector of London, like everything becomes too expensive to die, and when you disrupt the transportation to buy, and then when you disrupt the transportation sector, like you can't fast travel, and like I think
that'd be awesome.
And then like you could leave that as long as you wanted up until the final sequence, so you could follow it up immediately with Evia's stuff. Or like he was saying, they were thinking like some people would, like the hardcore players would be like, yeah, well, I left London completely busted all the way up till sequence 9 or whatever, you know, before you have to fix everything to progress to the final sequence. But like I think something like that would have left a little more weight. I do agree that it feels like the tension and resolution of that tension between the twins could have used a little more, a little more in both of those aspects. And I was actually kind of surprised that the shroud was never used to really. The only time the shroud was used was with Starrick, during the boss fight.
Yeah.
And which was kind of cool, but it also makes me wonder why they didn't just rip the shroud off of him instead of stabbing him over and over. But I was kind of expecting, honestly, for like, you know, Henry or one of the twins to get like severely injured, maybe not dead because the shroud can't revive the dead, but like, and also, also in the modern day, like Rebecca gets shot. And she's like, the shroud. And then Sean's like, no, we need to get you out of here. I'm like, no, you need to get the fucking shroud and put it on Rebecca. Like,
yes.
That, like, not only to save Rebecca, but also because then you keep it out of the head. Like, what are you doing, Sean? Like, yes, the shroud. Like, I was really surprised and in a way kind of glad in some aspect that they didn't use it like that, because it could be a really cheap moment if it's like, oh no, and now this person's mortally wounded and now they're all better, like, you know, kind of like a Deus Ex Machina type device.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of glad they didn't use it like that, but at the same time, I don't know, it felt like there's the potential for higher stakes here and there, and especially with the gameplay stuff, I think that would have solved a lot of that feeling for me, at least.
Oh, that gameplay stuff, hearing that, oh man, that would have sent that game to me to another level of awesome, like, and believability. Like, seriously, that could have, oh man, that gets me excited.
I think it would have really set it apart, I think. And I think it would have been a really bold move. It would have pissed a lot of players off, but I think it would have been, I really, really wish that they would have done it, even as I understand why Ubisoft is like, we can't do that in our like multi-millions, like cash cow franchise that funds all of our projects here. Like, it's a little bit too radical of an idea to put in that, unfortunately. But yeah, well, I was talking with Jeffrey, and we were like we need to have like an indie mode, like, because he was saying it's more like like the kind of thing that you could get away with like in an indie game. So you need to be able to toggle like indie mode on and off, like for these games, maybe.
It's those bold moves that can either pay off big or totally screw it up. So it is tough when you've got, like you said, that multi-million-dollar franchise that it's tough to gamble, and if you don't have to gamble, I can understand why you wouldn't. So it does. Yeah,
you have to strike a balance between keeping it fresh and also playing it safe, like, so you don't alienate a bunch of people. And it's tough, and like, I don't think there's an easy answer for a company that relies on this franchise as much. I think the real answer is what I talked to Yves Guillemot, the CEO, about. Like, someone submitted a question when I was listening questions from about, in the future, like, as we build up these other franchises like Watch Dogs and Far Cry, and they get more frequent releases, maybe we can reduce the financial dependency of Ubisoft on these yearly Assassin's Creed releases. Not only like reducing how often they have to come out, but maybe also, you know, allowing them to take a little more risk in gameplay ideas that might alienate some people, but be really interesting for a lot of other people. And I hope that in the future we'll do that. We'll see. We'll do that. That they'll do that. We'll see. I don't know if it'll ever get like that, but he seemed to indicate that they were kind of looking to reduce their reliance on Assassin's Creed, as I'm sure they would love to.
They've got a few more steps to make with the other franchises. I think possibly Primal's a step in the right direction. Something different, especially since Far Cry 4 was so identical to 3. It's nice to see, because I was wondering what they could do with Far Cry. I'm like, where do they go? Because they kind of nailed it with Far Cry 3, and Far Cry 4 was good, but I'm like, what? How do they move on and keep it to the same feel as, like, this is a Far Cry game? Because it's so set on being you're in this, you know, I guess primal, no pun intended, world, you know, like, no matter what time period you're in this, you know, wasteland, wilderness kind of place where you've just got to survive from the land and the world you're in, and use the world you're in to, you know, try to thrive no matter where you are. And I like the step Primal's taking, something I've never seen, something different.
Yeah, I think that was a brilliant idea and I think it fits within the franchise totally. They have a great tagline for it, which is like, survival is timeless, right? I don't know if that's the official tagline, but it's
a good one.
You know, they had it with the teaser, like when they announced it, and I love it. I would love to see more things like that in their other franchises. I think the obvious parallel for AC would be either like a first Civ game, like Sean hinted at in AC3, or a modern day game, which we're never ever gonna get.
Good.
Yeah. No. What? No.
No. I don't want to see it. No, I don't want to see it.
I don't know. I know somebody out there, whether, like I've said this before, like somebody out there, whether it's Patrice or someone else, like, you know, Patrice originally was going to make like a modern day Desmond game, right? Like, whether it's Patrice or someone else, someone out there has in them an amazing Assassin's Creed modern day. I don't think it's really viable, like financially or maybe production wise, because you'd have to reinvent so many mechanics. But I know it exists out there, and just it drives me nuts that like we're never really like I just know we're never really going to be able to reach out and just get it. You know what I mean? But it would be tricky for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, talking about modern day. So, the modern day in Syndicate and I suppose Unity as well, but Syndicate like mainly. What do you think of like where they're going with it? Like, do you think we're ever going to get a return to that third person modern day gameplay? And like, also, what did you think about? Did you see the thing inside of Syndicate with like Desmond's son?
Yeah.
Or whatever the hell was going on there. Like, what do you think about all of that?
Everything now.
Everything.
Yeah. Let's see. Sorry, the first question. If we ever see like another if we see another third-person playable thing, I think we'll eventually get there. I think it might be years, maybe not. I don't know. Jeffrey was talking about how they originally had playable modern-day little bits in Syndicate where it was like an escape sequence in one of that turned into a cinematic, basically. I think I don't know. My life has become a lot less stressful once I decided I no longer cared about the modern day.
Oh yeah, yes.
I'm yet to reach that point.
I reached that point right after Unity, and I'm just like, because even if they improve it from where it is now, like I just realized that I was hanging on so much to the promise of the first three games, AC 1, 2, and Brotherhood, and the modern day across those three games is so spectacular. I love it so much, and when at the end of Brotherhood is just like my head was just exploding with possibilities of like where this was going to go, and this was still when it was indicating towards Desmond being like this master assassin that would get his own game and everything, and I was just so invested in that and everything, and then since then it's just been this, and again I don't know if this is because Patrice left or if it just happens to coincide with it, but like it's just been it feels like it's been lacking a cohesive vision to me.
For sure.
And it feels like it's just kind of lurching from place to place now, and nobody really has a handle on it. And I think you really need someone, I'm guessing like Patrice or Corey or somebody that has a real vision for the modern day and is able to really get everybody behind it and to convince management like we need this budget, we are going to commit to it, because right now it's just this I hate it because they're like Ubisoft does these surveys and it's like they're like, well, we're not going to make them, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost, like or a cycle, because it's like people say like, oh, we don't like the modern day, and then they're like, okay, well, we're not going to put much effort into it, and I'm like, yeah, but like nobody likes the modern day because it's been shit for a long time. Like,
because there's no effort.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like people don't like this version of the modern day, but if we actually got someone with like a really like cohesive vision for this modern day, and they had the budget to execute on what they wanted to, and everybody on the team was behind it, because I've gotten the impression in the past, like just from talking to people, that like the modern day is almost as divisive within Ubisoft as it is with like the general public. And so I feel like that kind of like apathy is not going to lead to a satisfying modern day. And I just, and so I at some point after Unity, I'm like, look, even if they improve from Unity, and I think you can only go up from Unity to modern day. And so like, even if they improve from that, it's just never going to be the promise and what I really got invested in with the first three games. And so I think eventually we'll come around to a new third-person protagonist, but I think if they're ever going to really deliver a really satisfying modern-day thing, it's going to be still like a couple years off. And like I said, I think it needs to have that kind of all the things I just described before it'll actually happen. As far as what were the other questions about?
Desmond's son. But just before
Desmond's son.
Before we get into that. Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to butt in there.
No problem. Yeah.
So with the modern day, do you think? I mean, like you said, it was something that was so great. I totally agree. And Revelations was okay, but it felt more again like setting up to 3, and then 3 just didn't deliver. I was of the opinion since Black Flag. Once they did Black Flag, I'm like, what the fuck was this first person shit? Like, this isn't a thing, is it? And then I was pretty much had let go, and then Unity happened. I'm like, just fuck this. They need to just get rid of it. Because the thing about, the modern day once was great, sure, and it's a cool concept, a cool universe, but if you don't put in any effort and you don't care about it, just don't do it. The most important thing to me is the ancestor storyline anyway. I don't need to have a modern day. I don't need cutscenes that interrupt that. If you make a good ancestor storyline, what's better than just playing as some time period assassin?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it should get rid of the modern day at all, like have nothing to do with the Animus or anything, because it still lets you do some cool stuff with like the Helix Rift in Syndicates and stuff would not be possible without the framework of
I think
the Animus in modern day. I mean, I guess you could have it like as a standalone chapter and just be like, oh, and this is what happened if, like, 60 years later or whatever. But at the same time, I think it still allows for some really cool elements where it's like this portal that's just open at the end of the Thames River, and like Juno calls out to you, and I still love Juno so much. Like, she's probably like the only thing left in the modern day that I'm really kind of curious about, because I think she's kind of a fascinating character, even with the small amount of screen time she gets, and like she's so fucking creepy, and like she calls you in, and like that part, I really love that kind of stuff, and so I don't know, I don't think they should get rid of it completely, but at this point I'm kind of like, whatever they're gonna do with it, I'm never really gonna be fully happy with. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'll let them do their thing, and I'll enjoy the parts I do and ignore the parts I don't for the most part, and mainly focus on if they can deliver a good like historical story, I think,
And I agree though that they shouldn't get rid of like the Animus stuff, because I think that's all great, but I mean the way I see it, getting rid of the Monday is just getting rid of the cutscenes and the interruptions.
Spending time with it.
Exactly. I think it could just be like the disc we get, and the way they play with the game is just you've just bought an Abstergo Industries game and you're entering an Animus as the console, and here we go. So you're in an Animus, but we're the players in an Animus, and we don't have to deal with anything outside of that.
Yeah, like Liberation. Liberation was like that.
Yeah, pretty much. So it's there, you're in an Animus, and all those things are possible, but there's no interruptions, in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally see that point of view, too. Yeah.
Where were we going? Oh, the Desmond Sun thing.
Desmond Sun thing, yeah. So if you want my opinion on the Desmond Sun thing, I'm kind of baffled that they're bringing it back in some way. And I don't know. I won't spend too much time on this because I talk about it with Jeffrey, because it was obviously a big point of like a lot of fans were asking about this. So we talk about it a bit. The first thing I'd note is that it's not necessarily Desmond's son, right? It's only his patrilineal line, which is his father's. They only talk about his father's bloodline, which includes Ezio and Connor, I believe, and then some Wild West thing that they're like teasing or whatever. So it could easily be something like a half brother of Desmond. It doesn't have to be his son.
Oh, controversial.
So mad.
It could be a little brother of Desmond, like not even a half brother, maybe William Miles.
But it doesn't. I guess my thing is, I'd rather it be a random stranger than be a half brother. I'm sorry, James is laughing because we've had so many arguments with other people about this, and I think
William Miles, ladies' man.
Yeah, I think the thing is, it's just because it's William Miles. Like, we know about him and we know him, whereas it doesn't make sense of him randomly having some son he doesn't know. Whereas Desmond ran off in New York as a bartender. You know, he had the lifestyle that it makes sense that there's an unexplained child, whereas William Miles doesn't. It would, to me, make more sense of it being someone that just has three similar, relations, if that makes sense.
Well, I think someone did the math, and they were like, well, if this is Desmond's son, and they're 10 years old right now, then, like, Desmond would have, like, fathered a child at 17 or something, because Desmond is not that old at all. And, like, I don't know if that's exactly...
How old was he in 3? Was he, like, 26? Something like that, was he? I don't know.
25, yeah. He would have been 17 when he fathered the child. But I mean,
yeah.
Remember being 17 though.
So is William Miles being a total like man whore or whatever, or having like, I don't know, whatever. Like, I'm not saying any of these like preclude it from happening. I just think it's interesting. The thing about Desmond's son is, I brought this up with Jeffrey, so I won't go too much into it. But like, I was under the impression that when Darby wrote the stuff in AC4 about Desmond explaining how when Clay like basically hugs him, saves him in Revelations, that he transferred, like he kind of transferred all these like visions of different calculations that first Civ people would see of the future, basically. And in one of those futures, he had a son, right? And that was, in my understanding was that was Darby's way of being like, okay, everybody keeps asking about this. Let's put this to rest. Like nothing's gonna happen with it. Like we can all stop asking about it. So it's really interesting to me to see it come back up, and it's
yeah, it's been one of those things that's been on and off since like Brotherhood, when you had like Subject 16 in the Truth being like your son.
There's stuff from that from the Truth that's still, there's a lot of stuff in there that's still playing out, like notably the Eve stuff as well, which is still getting lip service in Liberation and Dead Kings, but like so it's really weird for me to see it come back like this. And even if it doesn't end up being literally his son, they're definitely kind of like alluding to it. Like they know that the fans are going to be like, Desmond has a son? Is this the Desmond son in the Truth? And it just, what worries me about it is...
I like it though. It's nice. It's nice to have something like this. Like even if it doesn't come up, which is like knowing the track record of the last couple of years, it won't. But at least it's good to have something feel like this again, especially something back, like you said, from Brotherhood that had such a good modern day and the whole Truth and everything. It might be the craziest thing you've ever heard, and it might just be because, you know, you can kind of fit whatever theory you want in there for speculation purposes, because some things just fit as you want. There's something I said to James, it's pretty crazy.
Oh yeah, this thing, yeah, I know what you mean, yeah.
But
and I thought of this before, but it's like, it's probably not a thing, but it fits.
It fits just because I make it fit. In the Brotherhood Truth, you know, we assume it's Subject 16 talking to Desmond.
It is Subject 16.
Well, is it though?
This is where it gets a bit weird.
Is it Subject 16 though?
Well, I mean, it's his consciousness.
Is it though? Is it 16 talking to him? Because when he says, when Desmond says 16, it's a question mark, and you look at the start of Revelations, the first thing he says again to Clay is 16 question mark, and he goes in Revelations, he says, oh, they didn't tell you my name, whereas in Brotherhood he goes, yes, Subject 17.
but
that's all I'm saying, man.
It's not like,
think about it.
Like Clay is addressing Desmond like yeah, Subject 17. You're right. Like it's as if Desmond asked him like Subject 17. He's like, yeah, I'm Subject 17, kind of thing, like clarifying that he's right, but said 17.
Well, they're definitely the same. Well, okay, so if it's not Subject 16, then it's going to be a retcon. Let's put it that way. Like,
I'm just saying.
I mean, even in that same speech though, he tells Desmond to come find him in the darkness, right? And that's
which
a reference
makes sense to Revelations, yeah.
Yeah, which just, and so like that alone speaks to the fact that they're the same. But like I could see how they could retcon it out of the way. But every time I've talked to the writers and we reference like Brotherhood and Clay and everything, there's never been any question that that's Clay. I think it's an interesting idea, and I'm not saying they couldn't do that.
Yes,
but I think it would definitely be a retcon of what.
I agree.
Several years.
I agree. It wouldn't be a planned thing that they thought ahead of time. I'm just saying at this point, it's not like you couldn't spin it off to being. It's not Desmond talking to 16. It's Desmond talking to Desmond. That's all I'm saying. That's because I thought listening to it again. Just pretend in your imagination that it's future dead, brain dead Subject 17 from the future talking to Desmond, and then listen to it again. It might give you goosebumps. That's all I'm saying. Just for the fun of it.
So wait, which one's future? The future one is Subject 16?
Yes.
Is actually
what I'm saying
17?
Is it's actually Desmond talking to Desmond.
Okay. I'll look at that, and it'll be interesting, I think.
It's just something fun to do.
But I mean, I don't know if that would be any less of a crazy retcon as what they've been doing, like with the box, you know, from Embers and everything. When now they're suddenly like, oh yeah, and suddenly it's a precursor artifact. Like, it totally can. These kind of things can happen, and this was kind of the point I was making with Jeffrey actually, when we were talking about. I thought like where I'm like, it seems like one writer was trying to resolve this, and now another one's trying to bring it back up, and like to me, the issue that brings up to me, and this also applies to the box, is like it really feels like the writing team isn't really on the same page as far as like the
No,
modern
not
day
at all.
goes. You know what I mean? Like that's what worries me like the most. And if you want the modern day to succeed, you need to have a really cohesive vision and narrative like the first 3 games had, right?
Yeah.
And like so that's what worried me. And Jeffrey had a really funny response that you'll have to listen to it because I think there's a lot of nuance in there. But what I got from it, like reading between the lines of what he said, he didn't actually say this,
Yeah.
was he was basically like, what I got from it was he was telling me, yeah, Darby might have done that, but like sometimes you just gotta fuck shit up to make an interesting story.
Oh God. Yeah.
That kind of like thing where it's like, you know, he was talking about the other like some people like he doesn't think that it's a good story. You can't have good stories if you don't take risks, and if like certain brand people or other writers are like really miserly and like you can't change this because this is my plot thread or whatever. Jeffrey kind of likes to go and like mess with things and see what happens, you know, a little bit, and I really love that about him. In this case, it makes it seem like
Strange.
I don't know. That's just what worries me. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. He definitely indicated that it's not just like some random reference that they're not going to revisit. It's definitely now a thing that they're going to follow up on. So we'll see where it goes. I mean,
Yeah. Jeffrey
it could be really cool.
Jeffrey did Rogue, didn't he?
No, Jeffrey did Rogue was Richard Faris.
Who?
Jeffrey. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just trying to remember because I remember listening to your podcast. I'm not sure if it was the beginning of this year or the end of last year after Rogue came out. You were talking to the lead writer of Rogue, was it?
Yeah, Richard.
Yes, Richard. Okay, because
Jeffrey
did
did Brotherhood and Syndicate and Dead
Yeah.
Kings and so a lot of the DLCs. He did Lost Archive, Da Vinci Disappearance,
Yes,
multiplayer stuff. Yeah.
Because
Sorry, go ahead.
Because I was curious with the whole box situation because I'm very interested in the box. I'm not sure if you know this, but box is very important to me. And the thing that frustrated me about the writer of Rogue was saying in the podcast, I think I'm getting this right, was that there could be multiple boxes.
Oh yeah, there definitely are multiple boxes.
And that annoyed the shit out of me because
there's also multiple shrouds. They're just like there's more of everything.
Look, because with Piece of Eden, I kind of got that from the beginning that there were lots. You know, from the first game, there was all these dots on the map. Whereas with the box, it seemed like that one special thing. And the way it was written by whoever, maybe it was multiple people at the time, the way they moved it around, it just was like, this is the one box. It felt like, for once, they had a plan, and then this one guy comes in and goes, yeah, but there's multiple, so it might be different ones. I'm like, are you serious, man? Because they're clearly from everything you've written, there isn't multiple boxes. You're just screwing it up right now. You personally are fucking it up. That made me so mad.
So much hate.
I don't know if I'd go that far. I think there were a lot of people involved with the different iterations of the box, but like I do think it's a little worrying in that respect too, because I think honestly, the impression I get is that actually the multiple Apple thing came out of that they kind of fucked up that near the end of Brotherhood they kind of messed up the timeline of the Apple, and the only way to explain it that they could really explain it away is if they wrote 2 apples in, and that's why like Ezio at the end is like, oh, another apple. Like, because otherwise it didn't really make sense. I think that's the impression I get anyway. And so it worries me if it starts becoming a thing where it's like, oh, like if it's like this again, and it's like, oh shit, like our box timeline doesn't make up. Let's make 2 of them or something. because you would think it's like Ezio very clearly calls out that there's a second apple at the end of Revelations to kind of like wrap that up, right? Just be like, hey everybody, like this is. He's like, another apple? No, I've seen enough for one life. They never do anything like that for the box. Like, it's literally just in the podcast that he's like, yeah, there's probably more than one. Definitely. I'm like, okay, that's like the box thing just drives me nuts, as you probably heard on the podcast.
Yes.
So
yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you because I had the theory of after Dead Kings and everything, I expected it to be in Syndicate. You know, after Rogue, what it did, and then, you know, Shade get in the box, and then in Dead Kings, look, it's possible that it wasn't the box, but I spotted it in Napoleon's chest, his big, massive chest. You see 2 shots of the box and what's possibly the manuscript in it, and it's just
there was a little bit. We were talking about that, and I think it was Gabe who was like, oh yeah, like it's in Unity or Dead Kings as well, and we were like, what? I don't know, it could have just been an Easter egg. Like, I don't know what the head of Saint Denis is doing in Syndicate. like some of these things might just be Easter eggs that someone threw in, or without necessarily meaning it to be a big statement on the narrative of the series. I don't know. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, because I just saw with the box being in Dead Kings. You know, when I saw it, I was like, oh my god, it's the box. You know, it looked exactly like the box did in I'm not sure if it looked like the Rogue one or it looked like the original Ezio's one. I forget. I think it looked like Ezio's.
Yeah, it looked like Ezio's. Yeah.
So I think it'll just be a lot easier on your brain if you just
let it go.
You know, no. I mean, if you just think of it as, you know, I feel like the box is actually one of the things that makes a little more sense to have multiple of, maybe more so than an apple. I know even the apple and the shroud. Like they talk about how the shroud was like a combat medic tool basically or something like that, and so that makes sense they have multiple. But like the box is like, if you say that the box's purpose is to translate manuscripts and stuff like that, then they're probably going to have a ton of them like that. If that is a precursor box that you see in Dead Kings or whatever, it very well could just be a totally different one than
that's true.
Either of the other two that we've seen, and it's just, you know, they keep one around with all their first civ documents because that's what you need to read them. Now I think it's I have no idea why it's a box that does this type of thing. Like,
it's because that wasn't originally the idea.
Yeah,
and they changed it.
Yeah, and I brought it up with Richard. I'm like, why did we have to reuse the box? Couldn't we just introduce a new thing? And he was like, oh, we don't want to introduce too many of these first civ artifacts. And then I was like, well, but it was never a first civ artifact until suddenly it became one. Like nobody saw embers and thought that was a first civ. That was my point. But like, I don't know, like it just seems really weird to me because boxes are meant to hold things. It's really weird for me that it's like that such a device. Like if the first civ constructs things pretty much like I don't know, the
Makes
function
sense,
form follows function for the most part. You know, it's not weird. And the box is like kind of an anomaly to me. It doesn't really look like it's hard. It doesn't really look like it should be doing what it's doing. You know, I don't know.
I think
it's really weird as well because Ezio gives it to Xiaojun and he's like,
yeah.
She goes to open it and he's like, only if you lose your way.
Yeah.
But it won't work because electricity wasn't invented. So she's going to open it and be like, this did nothing. Thank you so much, Ezio. Yeah. This was a waste of my time. Like,
yeah, I had a big... I had a lot of problems with that too, and I brought him up. And Richard was quick to point out it's not necessarily like electricity or lightning; it's a power source, quote unquote. So maybe like first civ have like special first civ batteries or something. Yeah, but like it still makes absolutely no sense. Like with what Ezio says, and it's so clearly like a retcon that this is another point where I'm like, this is why I'm not like this is why I'm not as invested anymore in like the modern day stuff, because like until they can show me like that they really actually until I'm convinced that they actually have a clear cohesive vision that everybody is behind, like I cannot get invested or I'm going to go crazy. Like I think some of you guys are.
I think the only reason I go crazy is because Ezio is the most important character to me in all my playing of video games. He's the most important character I've ever played, and it was they finished him up. I was so happy that they did. You know, to me, after playing the Assassin's Creed 2, I expected them to move on, and then, you know, you get Brotherhood, and I'm like, wow, I'm just so grateful that I got 2 games of this character. Then there's 3, and then they do this follow-up video. Like, I was just so happy that I got more than I ever, you know, could have asked for with that character. But then, to finish it off, they give me one last thing to hold on to, and it's the fucking box. And then...
Oh, I thought you were gonna say the Chronicles China voice appearance.
that
bothers me more than the box.
See, I didn't play.
What did they do? What did they do that for?
Yeah, see, I haven't played China yet. I think I'll wait till all of them are out and then just play them all. But yeah, I did see that. Someone said, you know, Ezio's in the tutorial. I'm like, oh, where'd they get Roger? And then I listened to it. I was like, I hate everything. and then I saw that you did the video with Roger. I was like, oh, thank God. Ubisoft just need to put that in the game now.
Yeah.
That's so why didn't they get him to do it? Like you got him to do it, but Ubisoft didn't. Like,
so I don't have like the official word on this, but the impression that I've gotten from, well, let's put it this way: nobody hears that voice and says, like, oh, okay, so sorry, let me make another kind of analogy. Like, you have 2 Altaïrs, right? Like 2 main Altaïrs anyway, AC1 and ACR, Philip Shabazz and Cass Anvar. And you can tell that Cass was very much like a creative choice. Same with like Subject 16 as well, right? He has 2 different voice actors. Like you can tell that these are creative choices. And if you ask fans which ones they prefer, you'll get some sort of split, and probably with the developers too. If you take Roger Craig Smith and the fake guy that they don't that nobody even knows his real name.
Fake guy.
Like if you take fake Ezio and compare him to real Ezio, there is absolutely nobody amongst the fan or developers that hears that and it's like, you know what, I actually prefer chain smoking, like whatever,
chain smoking,
questionable origin accent like Ezio over the Roger Craig Smith Ezio, which is the one true Ezio. So like,
yeah.
You have to understand, like a lot of the Ubisoft people that work on these games were not happy with the fake Ezio, and so like is not like this isn't like an official statement or anything, but everything I've heard and seen indicates to me that it was really just like, you know, they outsourced this to Climax Studios, a third-party game development company, and I think they're in the UK. I'm not sure. And like they had oversight over a lot of stuff, but this just slipped by. It's in the tutorial, and you know, maybe the stuff that maybe the stuff that they spot checked, you know, didn't include the tutorials. I don't know. And like by the time they notice it, it's, you know, whoever they could have replaced it, but whoever was in charge of that just didn't want to do it. And that's the part that really annoys me, is once you find out, it's like either patch it before the game comes out, or, you know, patch it after the game comes out. And yes, it's going to cost money. Of course, it's going to cost money to hire Roger, pay him, but it's not going to be that bad. You don't have to, it's not performance capture, it's not facial capture or anything. It's literally like what I did with Roger. You just have to record the lines. You don't have to sync it to anything. So you're literally just replacing some sound files. Okay, sorry, it's a little more complicated than that, but not too much in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
And the thing that bothers me about this type of thing, when they don't fix something like this where it clearly matters to a lot of fans, but it's like the general populace doesn't really care, you know, that much. But like it hurts us deeply.
It's an insult.
Like really deeply, because it tells, like to me anyway, it tells like the message that sends to me, even though I know it's more nuanced than this, but like my gut reaction is that the things that are important to me in this franchise are not important to the developers, right? Like that's kind of like the feeling I get. And I know that's not the case, but in this case anyway, and overall, you know, there's a lot of people with their hands in this franchise. I think the thing that I wish would happen in this case is, I don't know what kind of discussions went around, if there were any at all, about like trying to patch this in and then somebody shot it. This is all in my head, but I'm kind of imagining maybe someone was like, hey, can we patch this in? And then someone made the decision like, no, of course not. That's going to cost money. Like it sucks, but we're going to put it out there and we'll learn from it for next time. But like from my perspective, it's like, look, this franchise is basically Ubisoft's like financial lifeblood.
Correct, yeah.
And it's like the fans have endured a lot with this series because of the annualization and the way that Ubisoft has been using it to make so much money, that I don't think it's too much to ask that every once in a while, and this is a totally crazy idea that is never going to happen at Ubisoft, but like from my perspective, if I was in charge, I would be like, look, these fans have made us a ton of money. It allows us to explore all these new IPs and these new franchises and take risks in other areas and everything. And, you know, I don't think anybody would disagree that the series has suffered because of the annualization. I mean, there's other problems besides that, but it has. And the number of games that have come out. So let's just like make a small gesture. Yes, it's going to cost a relatively small amount of money, but let's just do this patch for the fans and get Roger in and make this the real Ezio, because like this is just such a silly, stupid mistake. Like, and in the grand scheme of things, it's not that hard to fix, seriously. And like, and you know, but it's important. It's important to these people that have supported us. Like that's like my perspective on it. And I understand that it's kind of, like it makes sense to me saying it to myself, but like if you said it like in a Ubisoft boardroom, like, you know, shareholders or whatever would probably be like, fuck that. Like,
yeah.
You know,
it's one voice in, you know, in a side-scroller game. Who gives a fuck? But to these hardcore fans like us, it's just this. It feels like sometimes Ubisoft have this endless middle finger they're holding up to us, and that little thing was them putting the left hand up with the middle finger as well. They're just like, here's the second one, you fucks, and I'm like, you sons of bitches.
I know it feels that way, but I've met enough of these people, and like at least I think I have a decent enough idea on how like these kind of things work out. Like it's not like an intentional middle finger to the fans.
I agree. I do agree.
Unfortunately, it's just
what happens.
It's just too many people having their hands in decisions, and I don't know. I
think you're right with the whole annualization, and the fact is that there's too many people involved, and there's too many writers, and there's not one creative vision, and it's because of that they're really it's suffered so much, and it's never. I don't think it'll ever be the same ever unless they shrink the teams, unless it becomes they take it back to it's not annual, it's one studio like Montreal, and it's one team doing it. Whereas as long as it's annual, as long as there's more than one studio doing it, it will never be the same again, because it can't be when there's too many hands in the pot of creative decisions. It just will never be the same.
Yeah. Well, what was interesting? I thought this was an interesting idea when I read the Game Informer piece on Patrice that came out earlier this year, maybe like May or June, that talked about his time at Ubisoft and then at THQ and going back. And it mentioned that the first time Patrice left was of his own accord in 2010 in the middle of Brotherhood's development, and that there were plans at that point, because this is right when they were annualizing the series, and the article mentions that there were talks to have him become like the creative director of the series, basically, and so that you would have these annualized titles, but then you would have he would have, and to be fair, Ubisoft has these types of people. I don't know if that's the exact title that they have, but they do have like brand people and like other people who are supposed to be in charge. Like Richard is kind of in charge of making sure all the narrative stays together. But I think it's hard for me, and I sometimes I worry because there are these people there are fans and other people who think some people put Patrice on a pedestal, like in this series, basically, and attribute too much of this to him. And like, I can totally see that. But like, at the same time, I don't want to discount what he brought to the series and what all the things that seem to have changed after he left, even though he's not necessarily the only cause of those. It's hard for me not to wonder what that might have been like. And I think the key would have been like, would he have had actual like control, as much creative freedom as like he would need to do things? Because right now, I don't know, this franchise is so huge. It's massive between all the transmedia stuff. It's just it's really hard, I think, for one person to get a handle on all of it and make sure everything's cohesive and in the same universe and plays nicely with each other. I think that's a really tough job. I don't envy the person that has to do it, although I do kind of envy them in some ways, but I don't.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It has to be a really tough job,
Oh, sorry guys, I'll be back in 1 sec. Someone's just hammering on the wall next to me. I'm gonna go tell them to fuck off. So, be back in 1 sec.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. Yeah, there's something I want to ask you, but I guess I'll wait till.
Yeah, sure.
Would like talk about, but I guess I'll wait till Tyler comes back about that. On the stream yesterday we did, and you did. Sorry, and I was talking about people were talking about that whole Rising Sun thing. About like the guy who made up like this website, like he like photoshopped like a fake website and pretended it was a website, like scrolled down it and stuff, and was like, oh my god, look at this fake trailer, like saying like it was all real and everything to get views and stuff.
Yeah,
like it was weird, and so many people.
I somehow totally missed that. Like I missed that entire situation.
It was so weird.
I'm back now.
Oh, hi. Hello.
Yeah, so I'm just keep talking about this Rising Sun stuff. I'll chime in every little bit, but I'm just going to keep my mic kind of muted in between stuff because this fucking guy's hammering above me. I thought it was behind me in my apartment building. I just went upstairs and was like, hey, bro, what's going on? Can you stop hammering? He's like, oh, I'll just be 15 minutes. I got to do this. I'm like, you fucking serious, bro? So I'll just
I don't think I've been.
It's not
I
bad.
haven't really been hearing it.
Yeah, I can't really hear it, to be honest, either.
You can't hear that.
Okay, it's really faint in the background, but it's not
Okay. Well,
It's
it's okay if it's faint. I would just really loud to me, so I assumed
super
it was
faint.
super loud, over the mic.
It's faint. No, it's not. No one's gonna care. It'll be fine.
Yeah, no, I thought it was just like maybe you lightly tapping your finger on the desk or something. Like that's like what it sounds like over here. It doesn't. Sound
Yeah.
Okay, because I was super angry talking to him. I was going up there like, fuck this guy. Oh, God. But I understand people have to work. He's doing his job, but yeah. But continue. Assassin's Creed Fake Rising Sun trailer.
Yeah, Rising Sun.
Okay, so do we want to like do an official like start back in so you guys can cut out the middle
well,
part?
So what should we? How do we?
Super professional. We'll just do whatever.
Yeah, we'll improv with what we've got.
No.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so so yeah, Rising Sun. Tyler, do you know anything about, like, what's your knowledge of it?
Well, the rumor, I guess, has been going on for ages of feudal Japan or some sort of Japan setting.
That video though.
Oh, that video. Oh, okay. So the video's popped up. Ethan found it, our friend Ethan, and he pretty much just pointed it out, saying it's fake and stuff. And I went and watched it and was pissed. Like, I was pissed about it, and I said on there, I commented on their video, and I said, look, because clearly these two guys, what they did was they acted like they're in a Skype call, just kind of chilling out, not an official like video or whatever. And one of them got sent, some, fully ranked up, Uplay account that got access to have a look at future projects from Ubisoft, and they watched some trailer which was just old Assassin's Creed game footage, and at the end there was some flash from like some samurai, and then it goes Assassin's Creed Rising Sun, and that was it. And I was terribly done, and they were like, oh my god, I found it, oh my god, and they're just going on and on.
Like, did you get that on record, man?
Yeah, like, oh my god, I got it.
Oh my god,
I'll send it to you. So
It sounds really cringeworthy.
Yeah.
I missed all of this, by the way.
Yeah.
I've not seen or heard any of this before.
But so many people were buying it. So many people believed their video. And I just commented. I just wrote a huge paragraph because they had like they made a website for it. They made a website for it with articles on it. And I just pointed out all the flaws. I was like, look, it's a bit sad because clearly you guys staged all of this. Like, it's not even you guys found a fake trailer. You guys staged all of this happening. And I was like, it's really embarrassing for, other, people in the community that, you're trying to represent a lot of us as well as, active members, and you're doing stuff like this that's just trying to get clearly, views and money and attention, and that you put this I was just telling them, this terrible trailer. It's something I would make, and I have no idea how to make one. And I just said, look, it's horrible, first of all. And in their article, they're like, Patrice is the creative director. I said, Patrice hasn't worked for Ubisoft since 2010. I'm like, you guys are...
They spelled like everything wrong, and it was like, yeah, this game's been in development since Assassin's Creed 2.
Yes, and we're saying all this stuff, and I just said, look, you've embarrassed yourselves, and you're honestly embarrassing, a lot of community members and the hot community as a whole, and you're making people, all these people like, oh my god, it's fully legit, and they're saying... Someone's like, so you guys aren't faking this, right? They're like, you can't fake screen capture. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? So I made my comment, and then all these other people, because a bunch of Ethan's video circulated, between James and myself and other friends we have in the community.
Then I got mad because we all commented like these things, and like rather than them like be like what they did was essentially removed all our comments that were saying it was fake. They just removed all of our comments, and I was like, okay, I'm mad. So I made a video about it, being like, this is bullshit. Let's just, just do, like, I was mad about it, right? And so everyone ended up going over there. The video got like 300 dislikes, and like the comments were just spam.
Oh man.
Mad. And then they disabled.
This video doesn't seem like it's worth even that. Honestly, I'd probably just laugh and
like the comments and likes, and I was like, oh. Okay.
You got some hate for that though, James, because I mean, like, I guess I agree with you, Luma. Like, I commented what I wanted to comment on it, and I said my thing. They just deleted my comment and disabled comments and stuff, and I was like, well, whatever. Now people are gonna know for sure if they can't comment on a video, they know it's fake. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, clearly,
exactly. They're not fooling the majority of people. Like, nobody's actually gonna pick this up, like, in a major story or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
From what I hear, anyway. I don't know. It sounds
pretty
like,
ridiculous.
It's like a silly, like, some people just fucking around and It's like, eh.
Yeah, look to younger people. Like if I was, I don't know, 5 years ago, during Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood time, I might have believed that sort of stuff. Like it wasn't that bad, but it's the little things that they just totally fucked up. And I was like, okay, this is me now. I'm like, that was really bad, and I'm embarrassed for you guys. But
it's really
yeah. I don't know if it was worth that energy. But James is a knee jerker in the reactor, and he was super mad.
Yeah, no, I think like a while, like at some point earlier in my life, I probably would have also just been, but like I think as I've gotten older, and I don't know, this sounds weird, but like, I just learn what is worth putting, investing effort in, kind of, that makes me happier. Yeah. And it's just like, in this case, it just sounds silly.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's one of those things, and I mean, I don't know if the video's still up. I haven't even thought about it, but I mean, there's no, you can't.
I check every single day.
Your life is consumed.
Yeah, it's taken over.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh yeah, But speaking of, I guess this is a good segue since we're talking about future games.
When it works out like this.
Yeah, well, it's perfect. This is professionalism. Unplanned professionalism. Where do you think the next game is gonna be? Do you know? Do you know things we don't?
So well, unfortunately, like I think I mentioned on one of my live streams that I do know like where the next game is, so I can't really.
Yeah, someone's told me. Someone was like, Luma knows the next setting. Ask him. I'm like, yeah, can you tell us?
I didn't mean it to be like a thing, but it was like somebody. It was just like sometimes when I'm in the middle of playing stuff, I don't have enough time to think about what I'm saying before. And someone was like, "Oh, like where do you think the next one's gonna be?" And I'm like, "Well, I shouldn't really say anything because I know where it's gonna be." And now like everyone's like, "Oh my God, Loomer knows the next one is." And I'm like, "Well, okay, but I'm not gonna say anything, obviously. Not only because I'm under NDA, but also like because it was part of like when I went to Ubisoft for the Unity launch, but also because like that's just fans. You guys know as fans, like that's just.
Yeah,
that would just be horrible to spoil that thing. Anyway. So I won't tell you what I think it'll be, but a question I get a lot that I answer on my live streams is like where I would like to see in the games, and I would love to just see any of the locations that are in Chronicles games as actual open world, like living, breathing. Areas, and it kind of bothers me that all these games so far have been so the Americas and Eurocentric, and I'm really ready for like going into Asia and like Africa or even Australia.
Maybe. Look, I love my country. I'm very proud of my country, but no, thank you. That is not a good setting.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I just really, after Unity and Syndicate were both very. I talked to this a little bit about Steven Totillo, the editor-in-chief of Kotaku, I literally just put out the podcast with him like 2 hours ago, and we were talking about this, and he really likes the games where there's more like exploration, and like the wilderness of AC3, the ocean and the forests of AC4, like the North Atlantic of Rogue and the River Valley and stuff like that. And he really feels like the franchise, like that's where the franchise has the most room to grow, like in terms of really making a next step. And it's not really these big single cities that we're going to see a lot of evolution in the series. And I can kind of see that. And so I would just really like to see, at least in the future, if not the next one, then the future ones, like more just not in a major European city. Just a different feel. And I do love the cities. I do want them to come back to it. But like for now, I think we're due for something like, it would be really nice to have something like AC4 where you do have cities, but there's also all this stuff in between them. The cities are almost kind of secondary to all the other stuff almost. So I would love to see something really fresh at this point.
In that case, Australia might not be a bad setting if that's where they're going, if they're going for the exploration. I mean, that'd be very different because the landscape of Australia is very different to the landscape of most other countries, It doesn't... You go out, when you're out you know, because you've been to Italy and everything, and I did.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to tell you this ever since you came out with the pilgrimage series, and I didn't know you were making it until like it, you know, you released it obviously, but I knew you went to the cities. You released the first episode when I was in Italy filming.
Oh, nice.
I was in Italy. I was like, oh, I'll film this stuff and everything, and I'll put out some videos. Like, and then I see yours. I'm like, Luma beats me to it.
No, I'm sorry.
No. I thought it was
about
hilarious. I was like,
Like
that's
on the
so
first
great.
episode
Oh
of
no,
KCC.
well, I totally think you should still absolutely put out your own videos. I mean, like one thing I've always kind of for a long time I worried about like when I had the Assassin's Den podcast and everything is like I don't want people to avoid making their own podcast just because because of some reason like oh well Loomer's going to interview this person so I don't need to interview this person or I shouldn't make a podcast. And for a long time I was really worried about that because
Really?
it's only been in the last year or two that like you guys, Animus Island, there was the official Assassin's Creed that we've actually seen more Assassin's Creed community like fan podcasts come out, and I'm like really happy to see that because my podcast should not be like the canonical like only one for multiple reasons, and not the least of which is because I don't dedicate nearly as much time as it would deserve if we really wanted to say that it was the like it's just ridiculous. And like even I'm a really strong believer that like like in almost every case it's really cool to see other people tackle the same subject, you know, up to a certain degree. I mean, obviously, if you had 100 people doing these types of videos, it's probably you're not going to get a whole lot out of the 101st video of Rome. But like, I think it's still really useful. I listen to Emily Reese does a podcast about video game soundtracks, and she used to work for I think it was Minnesota NPR, and now she has her own thing with Patreon and a new podcast that's the same thing but not affiliated with, sorry, not NPR, just NPR, Minnesota Public Radio, I guess, and she is. Like super professional, and we've interviewed some of the same composers because she interviews across the entire video games industry, whereas I pretty much solely focus on Assassin's Creed stuff. And so then we'll have some overlap, like we both interviewed Lauren Balfe, The Flight, who did the AC4 multiplayer, Olivier Derivier, and I love listening to her podcasts even though I've already interviewed the person because she comes at it from like a different angle. Like she's very much more she knows way more about music and like kind of music theory and like the technical aspects of it than I do. Whereas I can see like in mind, I approach it from like and the questions that I solicit from the community approach it not like as a student of music or whatever, but it's like, hey, we're like Assassin's Creed fans, like which moment was, and they lead to different discussions and there's like little bits of overlap, but like I love that
it's the same
that I get that extra perspective that I would never be able to give. And I think it's the same with like some people have done videos similar to the pilgrimage stuff both before and after my stuff before my series came out, and like all of them have their own you know, unique kind of benefits and perks, and I just really hope that yeah, like for all these things that just because I'm doing something doesn't mean like somebody else is being discouraged from it, I hope anyway. So I don't know, I say you should still do it, but
well I mean I think this goes to show for me who's watched you for a long time on your channel and from talking to you now, this is why the community loves you, because genuinely one of the nicest people I think I've ever talked to, you know, to be that, you know, selfless and say something like that. Yeah, sorry James. To say something like that instead, whereas like, you know, there's the other channels and people, you know, I've talked to, and you know, even me and James can do it where we're just like, we want to be at the top, we want to do this and that, and you know, we might be a bit more selfish, whereas you're at the top of your game and you're still like, no, but I want, you know, you want everyone else to grow as well as you know. And that's something that's really cool talking to you about it all.
I'm thanks. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like there is like a little like I think especially when I was starting out too, there definitely is like I'm not gonna lie, there is like a part of me that sometimes is like, oh, I want to be like the very best at this, and like it's really tempting to make that like at the detriment of other people. It's like, okay, so like, well, not like in explicit terms like that, but like in the idea of like, well, I'm going to interview this person, no one else is going to, but then like you very quickly kind of like squash that and be like, what are you like?
Yeah.
You step back from like the kind of instinctive reaction, at least what I used to when I was like younger and growing up. Sorry, not growing up with this, but like, you know, just feeling my way around it and everything, and it's just really like not. It becomes really apparent very quickly that that's just stupid and like really selfish, not the way, because like, you know, everybody starts from somewhere, and I've seen so many cool things from the community. It's like it's enough to immediately quash like any sense of that immediately, because people just make so much cool stuff in this community. It's really awesome.
Yeah, that's very cool. And I mean, I just approached it differently. I did put out the videos of my trip, because I didn't go to everywhere that, you know, Ezio was. I went to Rome, Florence, Venice, but I went to like Naples and stuff, and I just did, you know, an Italy trip, and I just filmed where I could. I just approached it in a different way. I just did kind of highlight videos, and I did it in like a podcast format with the friend I went with, and we just sat down and talked about the trip, and then just put over footage of places and Assassin's Creed comparisons. So it's just a bit of a
interesting.
It's just a different way to do it, and I thought for me it was better anyway, because I just filmed. I didn't really film as much as I would have liked, so I was just kind of like, it was good for us to just talk about our trip and then what our reaction to seeing things that were in Assassin's Creed. And, you know, for me, I found that easier, I think, for myself. So I think it was a blessing for me to see yours and be like, oh, I want to do something a bit different to that. So it's still good for me.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out at some point. But I mean, like, everybody's and I'm totally cool with, even if it's a case where like somebody is inspired and wants to do something really similar to something I've done, like that's totally cool, because like that's just how it works, like with these types of things. Like everything is inspired by everything, and like there's not really a whole lot of original ideas, and it's like all the cool stuff comes from building. Like I feel like people should really be kind of shameless in most ways, unless you're doing an identical ripoff of something. Like you should really be shameless about being inspired by other projects or ideas. That's certainly been the case for me, like throughout the history of my channel. Yeah.
James, did you want to do fan theories?
Yes. Let us delve in to the fan theories that our community gives us. So we've done this a couple of times where we've gone through fan theory. I think we've done like twice, right? We did one on our own, then we did one when we had Joe on. And so we asked the community, give us some of your theories about Assassin's Creed. Like, where do you think it's heading? What do you think's going on? And we get some really great ones, but also we get some really, really funny ones. and so it's just great. So shall I pick them at random?
Yes, I've also got two. One from Dr. Order, one from BQ.
Okay,
as well.
so those are going to be good then. So those are going to be decent. Okay, so we've got let's have a look.
So pretty much, Luma, we've just got to respond. Like, our thoughts on these theories. Like, do we think they're plausible, or do we think they're just fucking retarded? Like, essentially, like, we're just like, okay, man, we appreciate what you said, but might want to rethink it. A for effort. F maybe for execution. We appreciate it.
Well, we've got one here saying that Jack the Ripper is Jacob, and we've already talked about that.
I don't think that's necessarily like a dumb theory. I would be really disappointed if it actually happened, though. And I think you can tell, like in the trailers and everything, that Ubisoft's kind of playing around with the idea too. Even though I don't think that's the case, like that it's actually going to be Jacob. You can. I get the sense that they know it's going to be a theory, and that they don't mind feeding it a little bit and toying with the fans of it. Well, but yeah, I really hope it's.
Yeah,
if it does end up being true, I'm just gonna flip tables, because that is insane. Like, cannot justify.
It doesn't make sense.
Actions like that. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
I do wonder though. Why is it? Why is it just Evie? I'm not talking about. I'm not at all feeding this theory. It's not. I know it's not Jacob, but like, Why is it just Evie? What was the creative choice with that? To feed that theory, even though it's ridiculous?
I don't know. We'll have to find out. I mean, certainly it does help feed it, because the natural question is, oh, you're playing as Evie. Where's Jacob? Right? That's the very obvious
Yeah,
thing
he
to
turned
ask.
into a psychopath that murders and mutilates women.
But then,
Yeah, well,
Obviously,
I think it's a very natural train of thought to then be like, oh, wait a minute. Like, we never really figured out who Jack was. They could make Jack the Ripper Jacob. Like, what if that... Like, I think it's actually really... a really common train of thought, and so that's why I think they're kind of having fun with it a little bit. As
except
far as
in the World War One storyline, you know, you have Jacob's granddaughter, and in that storyline, she took Jacob and Evie out of London during the war. Like, unless like suddenly he was brainwashed and Evie saves him, and he doesn't pay for any of his crimes.
I think that's a very strong argument for it not being Jacob, but at the same time, I think to know that you would have to like read through the database entries, and so you're talking about like a secret area that not everybody's going to go to anyway, and then even fewer people are going to the database. So I think it's something they can play around with, even if it ends up being that they had the proof that it wasn't him in plain sight. You know what I mean? It certainly hasn't stopped the rest of the community from speculating. So we'll see how it plays out. Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, I have no idea what to expect from this.
True, very true.
Yeah, right. So I've got another one. I think this is going to be... yeah, we're just going to read it. So he starts off with, Desmond's son is Subject 19 from AC The Fall comic books. Here's the reason why we have the Helix machine. My bet is the assassins will learn of this in the next game, whilst in the modern day of the... Hang on a minute. Whilst in the modern day of the era it is set in. Okay. The game after will be sent after the kid and play as Galena. The kid goes to the past and learns the modern... Hang on.
Calm down, man.
I'm so sorry. And learns the modern ways of the ones before us.
The modern ways of the ones... Oh, so you mean because he's a sage?
He goes even further back and kills Juno. Oh, he's talking about fucking time travel? Okay. Where Arnold Schwarzenegger voice, where's Juno? Get to the flying spaceship. Oh no, solar flare. Because Nolan Borth reported of a time-traveling Desmond. Well, I mean, it's tied off.
Time-traveling Desmond.
Right,
Desmond is Subject 16 confirmed in Brotherhood.
I think I can spot at least a couple flaws with this theory.
Time traveling back in time and killing Juno.
A few things. I don't know about
That's
that.
hilarious.
Seems pretty, ironclad theory to me.
Not the worst one we've had. To be fair, it's not the worst one we've had. That's
No, it's not that bad at
pretty
all.
solid.
That's pretty solid compared to some of the others.
It's funny how it kind of starts out like really before he just or he or she just drops all semblance of trying to keep a straight face while writing this and just goes like nuts.
He's just like, I'll come up with a good one, and then, oh fuck this, let's just put in Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the very base level, I think at the very beginning of that, like, it's not. I don't think it could be a Subject 19 type situation, because the audio file in Syndicate says like, oh, we just literally found this kid and we're gonna keep our hands off of him and wait, basically, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of immediately kind of rips out the floor from underneath the whole theory at the beginning. But I mean, it's really creative.
Well, something I thought, speaking of the Desmond son thing, that James and I have talked about, just wanted to get your thoughts on. Let's just say, for argument's sake, I mean, like you said, you know where the next game is, but for argument's sake, let's say Desmond's son is the next game they introduce this Desmond son. You know, similar to Desmond, maybe he's captured by Abstergo. Maybe they're making him relive memories. He's not sure what's going on. Maybe he's captured. Maybe he's just kind of going in there. You know, he's brought into that facility. And someone was saying to me, someone made a comment that I kind of built off a little, and it was that they wanted a remastered version of the Desmond ancestors, like, you know, Altair, Ezio, Connor. And to do that, I thought you could do it in a way in which is similar to the Master Chief Collection, where you progress the modern day story, but you get the remastered version, where you kind of progress some sort of story. It's built around what they're trying to achieve, but it's 1 year they get to do something different. So let's say in the
like
next
give you an excuse to relive these memories again, and this time it's all remastered and stuff. Basically,
exactly.
Right.
So this time it'd be Desmond's son. Let's say in the next game plays as a new character, yada yada. But the game after that's the 10 years since AC1, and that
Anniversary.
you do the whole remastered of, let's say, all the Desmond games. But what it is you just start off and you're just where, let's say, you left off, and you're Desmond's son in that facility room, and you can just jump in the Animus wherever you want and pick which ancestor you want to play. Do you want to play Assassin's Creed 1, 2, Brotherhood, Revelations, or 3? So it's just one disc, all the games, and you're Desmond's son replaying them, and instead of Subject 16 glyphs, it could be Subject 17 glyphs.
Huh. Interesting. That sounds pretty cool. That's kind of like an extra step beyond what I think most people would expect. I mean, usually you would just throw the remastered games out and be like, yeah, it's just the old game, but with a shinier coat of paint or whatever. I think there's also kind of like a difference between, I've said on my streams before, like, I kind of try to draw a distinction between remasters and remakes. And so remaster to me would be like, oh, like we took the Ezio trilogy and made it 1080p, 60 frames a second.
Which I'm fine
and like
with.
maybe improved, like made some of the textures crisper, but like everything is pretty much the same. Like remake is like the Final Fantasy VII remake, or in this case, it would be basically taking the Unity/Syndicate engine, rebuilding Florence, redoing all the cinematics with like full performance capture, but keeping the basics of the story and most of like the mission structure and everything, but it's, very much feels like a different game.
Yeah.
And that would be interesting.
I think just because of how dearly close I hold those games, it worries me, because there's a potential there. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but a potential to lose something.
I don't know. I'm of the mindset that nothing's really that sacred in this type of situation. And if they do, I would rather see them do a remake than a remaster. I would love to see full 1-to-1 scale buildings in Italy, and like this amazing. I mean, the Unity and Syndicate engine is beautiful. It's one of the best next gen engines that I've seen so far. I would love to see Florence, Venice, Rome, like all these places like that, and just it would just be so cool. And if stuff is lost, I mean, it doesn't mean the old games cease to exist. Like that's kind
true.
of my.
That's true.
I know some people it's different, right? Like I think like you could take like the Star Wars prequels as kind of like a really good example of this. Like people are like, George Lucas like raped my childhood or whatever, and it's like I'm of the opinion that it's, well, no, I mean like I've heard that so many times.
Yeah, true,
right?
true.
And it's like, and to me it's like, well, I don't know. Like the old movies still exist. I can see where they're coming from, but like from my perspective, I'm able to kind of disassociate myself from it. Like in that case, so I would love to see them take a risk and actually like remake it. I don't think they would actually do that, but like I would be really surprised if they did.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know. That doesn't really answer what you were talking about. Sorry, with the Desmond something. I think that's a really cool idea, and I was just kind of thinking out loud if like it would make more sense for if you had his son go into like this upgraded Animus, right? Because a lot of times you can explain stuff like the Animus. It's like, oh, Altair doesn't have Desmond's face anymore because we upgraded the Animus. Like you could could potentially do the same thing, right? It's like, hey, we got a better representation of the city as it was now that we've upgraded the Animus and stuff. Like I think that could be really cool. I'm all about these types of things where you work in narrative reasons for things that don't usually have it. As I said earlier in the podcast, I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. There's a lot you can explain away. I mean, I'd be happy with them just chucking them on next gen. Like, I get that, but I mean, a remake would be very interesting to see what everything would look like, especially on that, Unity Syndicate engine. I mean, wow. Just thinking about that, it would look very cool. Very cool.
Would,
yeah. I think it would be. It might end up being divisive, but I think most people, if you just announced it and showed some screenshots and everything, and you reassured people, it's like, yes, it's Roger Craig Smith back as Ezio and all that. Like all the original cast is returning. Don't worry, we're just making it more beautiful and like applying a next gen coat of paint with the new parkour controls and everything. I think a lot of fans would be like, this looks really cool. And then when it comes out, it might be a little divisive. But I don't know. I really don't expect them to do that, but that's always been kind of my dream of what I would want to see for the old games,
Yeah. James, you ready have you found another great one? Great theory?
I looked through them and they're all pretty okay, so it's kind of boring. So I'd say if we're gonna go with a good one, go with Ordle.
Okay, I'll do Ordles first. So he sent me, this is weeks ago when we were supposed to do, when we had Super Rebel on and we were supposed to do fan theories, but Super Rebel doesn't play Assassin's Creed Luma, so we just ended up talking so much shit about, anything. It was the most ridiculous podcast I've ever been a part of or even listened to.
It was amazing. That one was great.
It was funny because it was ridiculous. Something you should never do. He's like, everyone send in what would you rathers, and just imagine the internet doing that.
Oh, we had a rap battle as well. Oh, it was.
He tried to do a rap battle live, and it was just hilariously bad.
It was so fun. He was amazing.
Sounds awesome.
So it's the Assassin's Creed Syndicate World War I Rift theory. This is Dr. Ordle, a friend of ours, community member, who has very knowledgeable with all the lore and everything, and always has lots of theories on stuff. So I haven't even read this, to be honest with you. It's Dr. Ordle, so I assume it's pretty good. Or very interesting at the least. So in the World War I Rift, Juno talks to you explaining some of the first Civ history. But why does she do this? Why would she want to tell you this? Or is it an exposition for the sake of exposition? Well, let's look at what she says at the end of the Rift, after you complete the last mission where you kill the spy master / sage. The man Lydia Fried killed was my husband, Aita Reborn, known in your time as a sage. Thank you for discovering his fate. His pattern will be added to my own. The pattern she is talking about sounds very similar to the blueprints Consus talked about that are found inside people. The Shroud uses these to replicate and heal damage that the user has sustained, but why would she need it? Then there's the next page. Well, if we look at sages, they are just people with a high first Civ DNA level, which see visions through their life of Aida's memories. Therefore, if she could collect his memories, in theory, she could revive him in a first Civ body, i.e. the ones Abstergo are growing in the Phoenix project, which we know Juno is planning to use for herself. The reason that she needs to find multiple sages is that they don't have the same memories, therefore to catch them all. I'm not sure if that's a Pokemon reference. I know Ordle loves Pokemon.
Of course it is. It's Ordle.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
You need to find...
Juno wants to be the very best.
You need to find multiple sages and thus recreate Aida's consciousness. Like Clay said in Revelations, what is a man but the sum of his memories? The whole point of the World War I Rift was to bait you by telling you the ISU's history, so that you would find the sage there. What's the ISU's history? I'm not sure what that was. Yeah.
Sorry, that's their official. Like they finally introduced like the actual name of that race.
There.
Oh really? ISU's history. I have no idea what that was. I'm like, I don't even know how to pronounce that. I'm gonna just say ISU.
Yeah, no worries.
So that you would find the sage there. In the end, she got what she wanted. Aida's memories ready for her, and his return to physical form. After all, it was Consus that said, "He who is the image of Aita will herald her return."
That is really good, actually.
Good job, Dr. Ordle. Good job. Interesting.
That's really
in depth. That lines up a lot with what I had kind of assumed was going on with her collecting the sage patterns and everything. It wasn't really clear to me if she was collecting it so that she could have a first Civ body to inhabit. That's the thing that I'm not 100% clear on, is if this first Civ body that they're constructing out of sage blood, it seemed to me like the Abstergo is just kind of sequencing the triple helix or whatever, and I don't think that's necessarily associated with Aida. Like if these people would come out as Aida, or if they would be just kind of like, I don't know, just like some weird first Civ clone or whatever. And so I can't tell if she's wanting a body for herself or if she's trying to bring Aida back into the world, like as not as a sage, but as like an actual Isu person. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's what she's. I think because, like you said, with the last little quote where it's like the thing that Aita will herald her return or something like that, is like, I think what she's trying to do is collect all of his memories so she can perfectly, because Abstergo are trying to like sequence like the triple helix and everything, and create like these first Civ things. So I think Juno is using Abstergo so that she can get Aita to come back, so that he can get her to come back. And then I don't know what the next part of the plan is, but I feel like that's where that's going.
Well, see, that's the thing that confuses me, because originally, like in AC4, Juno's trying to get a body, right? And they kind of imply she can just go into a human body, right? Like that's the whole thing that John from IT was trying to get you to do. Yeah. And like in a very exposition-y way, he's like, this didn't work yet. She was supposed to go in your body. And like, you know, Juno's like, I'm not powerful enough yet. And then she like fades away. But then like in Unity or whatever, they kind of imply, I forget where exactly, it might have been in like one of these collected data things from the Helix Rift or something. They kind of imply that she kind of has given up on that plan and is now trying to bring everybody into the gray with her. You know what I mean? Like,
well, she's got 16 and Desmond, doesn't she? She said that in Unity in one of those things.
Yeah, they kind of make some weird reference to that, and I'm choosing to ignore that until it becomes an actual issue.
Fair enough. Very fair enough. Yep.
I find it's easier on my brain that way. And so it's weird to me that sometimes I have trouble discerning her motivations, because like I can't tell if originally she was trying to go into a human body. Now she's just trying to bring people into the internet with her, basically. Or she might want a first Civ body, you know, like kind of Age of Ultron style. She's like, I don't want this fucking shitty body. I'm going to make the best body and then go into that. Or if she's just trying to bring Aida back, which is probably the most likely scenario, like the theorists said. But it feels like I don't know if it's unclear to me whether Juno is trying to... what unleashing Juno actually means at this point. Because she definitely has the presence and ability to affect the world. And if they're talking about a physical presence, then why is there all this talk about her bringing people into the gray with her? And why does she say at the very end, you know, I will save us all? Which kind of... I don't know. She kind of tells Violet that she'll spare her. And so it sounds like she's going to really mess up the world. But it's not clear to me that she needs a physical body to do that. In fact, it sounds like the people that she's saving, all the followers, are the ones being taken into the gray. You know, they're all like in AC4 and everything. They're like take us with you bring us into the gray. Like, we'll follow you into the gray and stuff like that. So it sounds like she's not really planning to make a physical return to me sometimes. And I'm having a little trouble figuring out what's going on with Juno in that sense.
Yeah, I always assumed she was really for kind of human control, like re-enslaving the humans. I always assumed that because like Minerva was kind of like against that whole thing. But then Juno was like, no, these, like, you know, they're slaves and stuff. Like, why are you giving them free will? Like, I feel like that's what she was going to do, but I don't know what they're doing anymore.
Yeah, it's tough. And you can't really believe anything she says either, because she talks about, in the World War I rift, she talks about, like, hey, we need not be enemies. Like, blah, blah, blah. And, like, one of the things I find really... I really love Juno as a character. And one thing I find really fascinating about her that I was talking a little bit about with Jeffrey in the podcast is that she has this side that she usually projects out that's very almost motherly, but also very kind of like a benevolent goddess type vibe. But like deep down, she is fucking vicious. And like Jeffrey was saying, like she doesn't really show her fangs all that much. And it's kind of exciting when you get glimpses of that. And so one of my favorite moments that I haven't really talked about with a lot of people and I haven't seen discussed a lot is at the end of Assassin's Creed 3 when Desmond has to make his choice, right? And both Minerva and Juno are trying to like convince him to do one or the other. And I very vividly remember Juno telling Desmond, like, it'll be over in an instant. It won't hurt at all. Or whatever. Like, she's just so like, it will save the world or whatever. And then when Desmond actually makes that choice, it is not over in an instant. He's very clearly in pain. And I don't think that was a mistake, like a writing mistake or something. I see that as like a very kind of almost subtle way of being like Juno.
Yeah, wow.
She can kind of convince you like on the outside that she is like
the good guy.
Very kind of
yeah,
like, but she is like deep down, like she still harbors, like she does not give a fuck about you if you are a human, like, and so that's part of why I find her so fascinating is because she has this really kind of like dark side that comes out every once in a while, but not in really overt ways. And so I find it really, I kind of view when she says we need not be enemies, and if like the greatest assassin of your time, maybe you should think about like, hey, we could be at peace. And deep down, I'm like, do not trust her. You do not trust this.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
So like I said earlier, like Juno is the main thing that I'm still like really fascinated about with the modern day these days. So I'm curious to see, yeah, exactly what her motives are and how this is going to play out with Aita and these first Civ Resident Evil style bodies they have growing in Abstergo, you know. I think it's a great theory, by the way. I think it sounds pretty spot on to what I had assumed was going on based on like what Juno had said and everything. So
Yeah. I agree.
Audel normally is. He's normally good with these things.
Yeah. Most of the time. No, I'll just give it a shit. He knows a lot. I have another one from BQ Overlord. Brendan sent in a theory.
Is this going to be a theory about it being set in Australia by any chance?
No, it's not. He has sent me those because
Christ.
he's Australian and he sent me those before, which I love because he's done drawings and stuff and he sent them to me and I think it's really awesome. But that's because like him, I'm also very biased because I'm from Australia. Yeah. So
for people like me, it's like, yeah, just fuck off, Tyler. Shut up.
Yeah. It's like, hey, Tyler, just for sure, relax. We're not going to Australia. I'm like, oh, please. No. But this one is actually a King Arthur setting.
Okay.
He's talking about how he thinks it would work. I think I've read through it like a couple weeks ago because again when we were supposed to do fan theories and we didn't. Like I've got a few. So I think because I don't actually know the history of the King Arthur story or anything so I am not well informed on this and how well this would fit anyway.
Like the whole Excalibur thing.
Like I know it vaguely. I saw the Disney cartoon as a kid, but I don't really remember much.
You know everything, mate.
So he sent in. Oh god, the hammering started again.
What is he doing? Like building a cabinet?
Well, when I went in, because I walked into the apartment he was in, I just walked straight in and was like, "Hey, man," and I think the carpet's gone, so he's renovating it, I guess.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, I'll get into the theory. Just sending in an idea for the podcast. Lady of the Lake and Excalibur theory is what he's calling it. So in the Assassin's Creed universe, King Arthur existed and was mentioned in AC2. I don't remember. I have no idea. King Arthur was said to have been in possession of the Sword of Eden. Merlin...
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, Merlin once used it too, but refused to use it. I'm assuming Merlin had it and refused to use it, and lasted into a stone at the bottom of a frozen lake. Okay, so, I guess it's put the Sword of Eden into a frozen lake, or hid it. I guess it's where he hid it. If you want to follow the legend of King Arthur, it could follow both the events of Merlin and Arthur with the sword. This could be an ancestor from when Merlin was young and a grandson or son of that character. We would see the rise of Merlin, King Arthur becoming king, the beginning of the Order of the Round Table and the war between the Saxons and Arthur, an obsession with magic and the Holy Grail, Morgana and Guinevere. I think that Guinevere bitch fight. I don't know who those people are. I'm probably not even pronouncing it right. Finally, the Lady of the Lake could be the first civilization member pulling the strings. As in the legend, she was the one who gave the sword to Merlin and Arthur. In the end, the sword would make Arthur go mad. Excalibur was said to be mystical and talk to Arthur. Even so, this could be an interesting setting for the series. This would basically be a medieval England setting, Kingdom of Albion setting. This would bring the series back to its roots and could be an extremely beautiful and interesting setting. This could mean so much. What do you guys think? Lots of love, BQ Overlord, aka Brendan Quinlan.
I think that sounds super awesome. I remember a little bit about like the mentions of King Arthur and like the glyphs and stuff, but you don't really hear people bring it up when they talk about where they want the series to go or whatever. And now that I think about it, and excuse me, now that I think about it, I hear the theory and everything. I really love that idea. I think it would be really cool. I'm all on board for that.
And
Yeah, I agree. That sounds cool.
it does sound pretty interesting. I don't know much about the history there. Like, I wish I did, because
me neither, right?
Yeah,
So,
Same.
and you get a little taste of like a medieval setting in the prologue to Unity, even though it's in France and not England. Not only in the prologue, but also you go back to the medieval times in one of
the
Rift, the third Rift, basically, and. I like the prologue more than the Rift, but I could totally see how you could do a really beautiful. I think it would have to be different from that, because I don't know, when you think of like, if you want to go with like kind of the usual depictions of King Arthur and everything, it doesn't bring to mind like these really dark and stormy type things that the prologue and the war of the Rift did. But I could see like some really beautiful countrysides and castles and everything. I think that would be really cool.
Wow, yeah, you've won me over there, because I was sitting here thinking, where would you climb? What cities would there be, as well as it? But beautiful countryside and castles would be.
Yeah,
imagine the assassinations of trying to infiltrate castles and stuff. Like, that's such a cool part of the games.
Yeah, and I think it would definitely be one of those games that's not just set in one city. It would be, with like a lot of countryside in between and stuff to make the most out of it. But I could totally see that working. And
we get horses back.
Do some, you get horses and
James is
and
obsessed with horses, by the way, if you didn't know.
And nice. And just like the stuff in the glyph says, like you already have like a blueprint for a lot of this stuff. And I really enjoy the parts of the game where they explain that modern, kind of myths from long ago, actually in a lot of ways actually happened. Like, Moses parted the Red Sea with the Staff of Eden type thing. I think that's really cool. And I think the medieval, like, King Arthur legend is, widely known enough that you could have a lot of real fun kind of showing scenes and showing how they were actually achieved with pieces of Eden. And I think I really like that idea a lot.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many aspects to it that I could see, but also not being someone who knows much about the history, I'm not sure how far you could go, but there's definitely a great setting in there. There's definitely some interesting first Civ stuff you could chuck in there, and I mean, it's something different. Like you said, you wanted something fresh in the future. I mean, James, do you know much about all the history of King Arthur? I mean, you're British. You should know all this. You should be an expert.
No, genuinely, I don't know anything. Like, I mean, like you, I watched the Disney cartoon, but other than that, nothing.
I think what would be really interesting with that setting is if, like the stuff like Unity and Syndicate and stuff, you have pieces of Eden, but they're kind of just used at the very end. They're kind of just the MacGuffins that drive the plot forward. But because like the King Arthur stuff is so much more kind of like legend, and it's set further back where you don't have as much like historical record and stuff, I think it would be really cool to have one that's kind of these pieces of Eden are not just something you're working towards and maybe you see it at the very end, but they're kind of used throughout the entire story. And that'd be like a really big departure from the current games, which are very largely, the kind of historical, nothing too first civvy until you get to the very end. But I think it would be kind of interesting to go through and kind of play through some of these myths and show them with pieces of Eden and have them play a much more active role in the story, like throughout the entire thing. I think that would be a really nice change of pace, and it works within the legends that everybody knows, more, because you don't hear legends of ladies in the lake and swords in the stone of Victorian London, but you do in this era. So you have a bit more freedom, I think, to go a little more fantastical, I think, with the first Civ aspect. That's what I would love to see from that. I really like this idea a lot.
Yeah, you can play around more when you've got settings that aren't as recent. So like we've had like Unity and Syndicate, and even AC4 and 3 and stuff like that. But like when we had like AC1 and like even like the SEO trilogy, like though you could play around more with those and have more fun with it, because we don't know as much about those settings. Like especially like the Third Crusade, like they could have way much more creative freedom with that because we don't know as much. And I think that's the same with this. Like you've got like the basis of the myths, but since like it's so far back, like they could have a lot of fun with it. And I think that makes it more interesting. And
they also just have so many relics that are rife for being pieces of Eden, with the Holy Grail and the Sword of Eden, like King Arthur's sword, and like plenty more, right? Like you could very easily fit those in more. I think it could be a nice change of pace and do something really cool. I would love to see that.
It's now in one of my top settings. I want to see, to be honest. It's one of the that's one of the ones up there. One of the ones up there.
Yeah, I'll have to think about it more, but yeah, me too a little bit. I hadn't thought about it before. That's a good theory. I like that.
Because I don't want to put you on the spot and be like, hey, Luma, just tell us next year's setting or anything. But this is just... I'm not going to do that to you. I'm not going to do that to you.
Yeah, I know.
But something I was just kind of going to put out there, and obviously if it was right, you couldn't respond. So probably if I'm wrong, still don't respond. But just for the sake of it. But I was like, when we were talking about in Syndicate and with the DLC, Evie's the only one there. So I'm thinking, where's Jacob? Is it possible? Because they're doing the whole Western thing. You're hinting at that for so long. Has Jacob gone to America at this time, at this age? And he's going all Red Dead Redemption on us?
Texas's cowboy.
Cowboy.
Oh.
See, I've interviewed enough writers at Ubisoft to know like exactly how they would respond like to something like this, and it's like, well, anything's possible.
I love it. That was great.
Right.
No, that's good.
And that tells you like nothing.
It tells me nothing. It's just like, oh no, what a great job, Tyler. Great job. We'll stick it right here, right on the refrigerator. Oh, yeah, well, that's just an idea. I was like, oh, possible, but then they never really do same characters anymore twice, which is a bit of a shame. Is that something you want to see again? Characters getting multiple games?
I don't know. It's tricky because I think I totally understand why they're switching up the characters, because it's one of their biggest defense. It's one of their biggest ways of keeping the series fresh, even though they're doing it annually, right? And by the time we hit Revelations, I was getting a little tired of Ezio as much as I love Ezio.
How dare you?
But at the same time, I'm not super happy with the current situation where it's like every year comes along, they introduce someone and they don't really provide any closure or resolution. And maybe we were just spoiled with Altair and Ezio because they closed those two out so nicely. But now it kind of leaves everybody wanting for, we've been waiting to hear about Connor since 2012, and they keep kind of teasing that.
Have we been waiting?
Who's Connor again? don't remember.
And like, it's just, I feel like there's kind of a problem right now where I'm not convinced that I kind of feel like there will be some characters that it's either going to take a really long time for them to provide closure, or they might just not tell us at all, because every year they're introducing a new person, and they introduce a new person that fans will eventually want to know what happens to. And so I think it's good to I think it's good that they're changing up the protagonists every year. I would like to see a little more in the way of like rogue style stuff where you see them again every once in a while in ways that make sense. You don't necessarily have to play as them, but I do like seeing recurring characters a little bit more than we have been, I think. And it would be nice if we knew whether to expect closure for every single protagonist that they introduce in this series, or if we should just not be invested in that anymore. I think they set the bar kind of high with Altair and Ezio, unfortunately. And so now it's like, we don't know what happens to Arno. We don't know what happens to Shay, Connor. Edward is like, the twins. Like, Edward's pretty much the only person we know, and it's not really that satisfying the way they released it. And so I guess it leaves open the possibility for stuff in the future. But right now, it's kind of just, it makes me a little less invested in the characters, I think, a little bit.
Yeah,
I love the twins.
That's what I think as well. It's one of those things. It's tough.
Yeah. So I don't think we necessarily need to see an Ezio trilogy type thing return, but I would like to see. I think it's good to have changing protagonists, but I would like to see a little more attention paid to tying them together and tying up loose ends with them a little bit, or make it clear that that's not what we should expect. I'd be okay with that too, because it's tough. It's tough to, you don't want it to feel forced either. Like to have like, oh, and then Connor bumped into Shay while he's walking down the road, like, something like that. It's really tricky. So it's, yeah, I would want a little more though, recurring stuff.
James, what did you say? Where do you think it's going to be next year? Have we talked about where you think it's going to be next year? And because you've heard me, I go on and on about it all the time.
Yeah, you are just all for it being about the movie, right? Like tying in with the movie.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm all about. Like, I don't want.
You just think that. Like,
that's
you
just what I
that.
expect to happen because
Well,
I did a video this week, Luma, and I talked about why I think the game's going to relate to the movie. Again, obviously you can't comment, but.
You fucking idiot.
Yeah, I just look at all the past things that Ubisoft have done with Assassin's Creed. They make 3. They also have to release a Vita game. You know, they want to take advantage of the release of the Vita, so they do another game. But it relates to 3. It's not, you know, the same character or anything, but, you know, same setting, same world. They meet. You know, you had Pirates, the app that came out with Black Flag. You had Lineage, the movie that came out with Assassin's Creed 2. Rogue and Unity had to connect somehow, even if it was a little ways. And I just kind of look at all that track record and I say, well, if you're going to release a movie in 2016, I don't think the game's going to be, you know, the game version of the movie, but I think it could be the son or the father or a side character that is involved in that world and it somehow relates and affects or is affected by the movie. That's all I think. Just makes sense marketing-wise to market them together somehow.
It's interesting. I actually have no idea if that's the case or not. Like if there's any ties or whatever. I think that's an interesting idea though.
Okay.
Yeah, personally, like,
tells us nothing.
Like,
yeah.
Like I did think originally that it would be something to do with the movie, but I'm kind of it's like staying away from that. Like I don't think the setting will be Spain. I don't think I don't know about time period. Like I feel like if it has anything to do with the movie, I feel like it's something that the character does in the game that will have something to do with the movie. Like they'll leave an artifact somewhere and it'll have something to do with the movie, or like they'll find an artifact that's been left in the movie. Hopefully not, because I want it to be set like not in recent history because I'm sick of it now. But I think it'll have maybe something relating to it. But I think they'll choose a different setting. Like we've had like I don't know, like China, India. Japan, or like a lot of fans have wanted Egypt for a while, which I think is cool, but I don't think it's something they'll do too soon. I think they'll do it in the future, but yeah, so I'm heading more towards China, Japan, possibly India, but I think China or Japan is probably, that's just where I see it going next.
Well, if you're talking about how the movie can relate to the game, then like you said, James, if you're talking about they leave something behind to do something. Well, if you're talking about Spain at that time, is around the time they discovered the New World, right? In the 1500s. If that's the case, you know, being whether it be in, you know, South America or wherever, you know, could have left something there, somehow been one of those first people over there. And then let's say you had an Old West game next year with Jacob, just throwing that out there for hypothetical. And then he could find something and be in that area. So that's something, but I mean, it's a bit. I'm just kind of. That's just kind of a hypothetical.
Yeah, you seem to be really for this now, Tyler. An Old West setting.
No, I'm not for it. I'm just saying hypothetically.
You're in love with it.
Hypothetically speaking, from what we've already been talking about, you know, but I think I just am so positive that it'll somehow relate to it. I'm of the position that it'll relate to it heavily in the sense of time period, but I might be wrong. But I'm so certain it'll at least, like you said, affect it somehow, even if it's just a small, you know, nod to it. It's just what Ubisoft does.
I'm actually anticipating, and this is just based on my own like conjecture, not like any official information or whatever. But
exactly what BPR said before he leaked everything. No, go ahead.
But like personally, just like from the way they've been setting up these games and everything, I kind of expect the modern days to link up more than the historical aspects. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Between movie and game. I think that's way more likely.
But when there's no modern
day...
But
I don't know. It could be very much the game has a strong historical tie to it as well. Sorry, what were you saying, Tyler?
No, I get what you mean. But with the only thing I was thinking was more of marketing sense. It's like they don't market the modern day when they talk about Assassin's Creed, other than when the hardcore fans want to see it. So in terms of marketing, how can they market a link between the two? I guess the reason I think it's going to relate to it is just because they want to sell them both, the same way they wanted to sell Liberations is something I go to heavily because to me, the selling point of Liberations was there's so much hype for Assassin's Creed 3, and like if you want to buy Assassin's Creed 3, if you have a Vita, you have to buy Liberations because it's the, it's the portable version of it. It's just as good. It's a different character though, but at the same time period with all those new features. To me, the selling point to it would be you'd market it and be like, this is the father of the main character of the movie, or this is the son of the main character of the movie, or this is the best friend or some other assassin that met him and stuff, You're able to market them together. That's the only thing I was thinking. I felt that's how they marketed Unity and Rogue together was, they relate to each other. There's something that links the two games, even though it wasn't that, well, it was pretty big, but, I expected maybe a little bit more. But, that's kind of how they market it. And I as well think modern day makes more sense to link, but how do you market that as a product?
Totally. Yeah. No, you bring up a lot of good points. It's from a marketing perspective, I hadn't thought about that before. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Yeah. Totally agree.
More theories, James, or is
they're all kind of We've got one like Desmond is hiding under a tree. Someone talked about the whole remastered versions, like bringing out the Ezio trilogy remastered, whatever.
Desmond's consciousness is trapped inside Desmond the dog.
Someone said in the next game we'll play as Desmond the dog and we get to explore the life of our dog ancestors or something. I was like,
oh, that'd be so cool.
I never thought if you were to put a dog into the Animus, can you relive dog?
That would fuck that dog up so much. He's so confused.
They'll start writing symbols on the wall, like bloody paw prints that end up as glyphs.
Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ.
Oh man. I would love to see more Desmond the dog references in future games or something.
That destroyed me. That
was hilarious.
So I guess we might wrap it up here then. I mean, we've been going for a while. Wow, over 2 hours.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll let you get back to it, Luma. We know you're a busy man, and we really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks again for having me on here. It was really fun. It was great to chat about a lot of this stuff that I don't usually get to thinking about or chatting about. It's really cool. Keep up the good work on the podcast, for sure.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
For sure.
And this is the last one of This is the last one of 2015, right, James? This is it?
Yeah, it's the last one of 2015. I just want to say to everybody watching on the 22nd of December at 11 a.m. GMT,
plugs.
the 24-hour live stream is going to be taking place playing Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, doing all the stuff in that, so come along. It'll be on this channel. Well, if you're watching it on my channel, then it's this channel, the network, LazerzZ Network channel, but if it's on Tyler's, then it's the LazerzZ Network channel, obviously. Same channel. I don't know why I said that. But yeah, that's a thing. So everyone know about that. There we go. Now we've got the plugin out of the way.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, I'm my head's spinning with how crazy this year's been, especially with this podcast. This has been my favorite thing to do on YouTube that I've ever done. It's kept me doing YouTube videos, to be honest, and how much it's kind of grown and changed within 12 months, and the great guests we've had. And it feels full circle to me personally to finish the year off with Luma, who has such a huge Assassin's Creed podcast, someone that I know has inspired James and I in a lot of ways with our channels, and to have him as a guest, is just one of those really cool things to finish the year off. And I hope everyone's, really enjoyed the discussion. I know how much everyone loves this sort of stuff as well. So again,
my pleasure. No problem.
Yeah.
Let me know if you want to chat again too, and I'm happy to hear that I've been inspired by so many other creators and the games themselves and the people who worked on them. It's flattering and cool to hear that you can kind of pass that on in a way, in some small way.
Yeah, exactly, man. Yeah, and I'd love to have you on again. I know. I'll just speak for James. I'm sure he does too. He's right.
Yeah, fantastic. There's a bunch of guests we obviously want to get on again, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Great.
Phenomenal. So
Okay.
I hope everyone enjoyed the podcast. Obviously, if you're not for some reason subscribed to Luma's channel, go and do that. And obviously to James and myself, we thank you all for the tremendous support this year. And I'll leave it to James to finish us off.
Yeah, and as always, buy our merch. Link in the description. But yeah. This has been cool. And we'll see you next year for the next episode of Kill Connor Club. There we go. So see you later.
Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. There we go. Cool.